If you're looking for one podcast feed that can deliver you a breakdown of the Othello influences on 2004's The Punisher, a ranking of every Batman movie trailer ever, and a celebration of the 15th anniversary of the Jackie Chan adventures, all in the same month, then the Pop Break is right for you. Every week, their team of talented podcasters release new episodes of shows that dive deep into your past, present, and future pop culture obsessions. So whether you need your weekly fix of One Piece's pirate adventures or Love Island's hot goss, the Pop Break has you covered. Subscribe on all major podcast platforms or by visiting thepopbreak.com. This podcast is sponsored in part by Rick Reason. No product pitch this time, no big sales campaign. Just a comic fan helping support a show he genuinely enjoys. Rick believes comics matter because stories matter, especially ones about hope, grief, second chances, and trying to be better than you were yesterday. Follow Rick Reason on Facebook for comics, humor, life reflections, and the occasional third shift existential crisis. This podcast is an affiliate of BCW Supplies. The next time you need to restock on comic book bags, boards, boxes, and more, be sure to use promo code FSP to save 10% on your order. That's FSP for Flat Squirrel Productions. It helps support the show too. Thank you. Welcome to Lighting the Bat Signal, a Batman fan journey. I'm your host, Anthony Desiato. Joining me to discuss Batman Year 1 and Year 2, along with the animated films they inspired, is the host of Always Hold On to Smallville and a first-time guest on this show, Zach Moore. Welcome.
But Anthony, what will vengeance solve?
There you go. You know, I was going to say that if any readers made a drinking game out of any time Reaper said some version of Fear the Reaper in Batman Year 2, they would be demolished by the end of that reading.
Yes. He's got a catchphrase.
He sure does.
You got to brand yourself, you know?
I suppose. I'm very happy to have you here. Given how much time you spent with the decade-long origin story known as Smallville, I say to myself, this is a man who enjoys an origin story, so better to have for this than you.
Well, thank you. I love Superman. I also love Batman. When I was growing up, Batman the Animated Series was my thing. The Batman movies were coming out until Smallville. If you asked me, hey, who do you like better, Batman or Superman? I would say Batman. As much as I loved the Christopher Reeve movies and watching the George Reeves TV show and all that, Batman was the hot thing of the 90s. And we are, born in the 80s, children of the 90s. We both are. And you don't remember how it was, right? It was a Batman movie every couple of years and a Batman cartoon. It was just Batman. And Batman was my guy up until Smallville was like, no, I'm your guy. So here we are, a couple of Batman and Superman fans talking Batman, right?
100%. Is there any chance we'll ever see an Always Hold On to Gotham from you? Or is that not in the cards?
That is what I call a recession indicator. When there's Always Hold On to Gotham. Don't get me wrong. I have thought about it just out of curiosity because I watched some. I was not impressed. I watched the very last episode. I was intrigued, but also like that show's just crazy, man. It's just all over the place, and it would make sense in a way because it's like, look, it's the Batman version of Smallville, but I take. I won't say I take offense. I have a problem with people saying, look, it's the Batman version of Smallville because I think it's very, very different case there. But, who's to say? Maybe one day. What will we get first? Always Hold On to Gotham or Smallville, the animated series? Stay tuned, listeners.
Yeah, TBD on those fronts. I will say, though, the deeper I get into this podcast series, and especially looking at Batman Year 1 for this one, it does have me thinking more and more about Gotham, and I will be revisiting that series in some way, shape, or form on this podcast down the line, and I'm looking forward to it, because I watched it as it was airing originally, and yes, highs and lows, it was a bit all over the place, but at its best, it was really strong, and I do still kind of look at it overall as a positive, and so I look forward to going back to it down the line.
I will say this about Gotham. I think that I might have held against it what it wasn't and not what it was, because I love the Gotham Central comic book run. And that seemed like the perfect, avenue for something like that. I'm like, oh, you did this instead? Could you not have done that instead? And so that I always carried that chip on my shoulder. So I watched like a dozen episodes or so in the first season. I feel like I gave it a fair shake. It wasn't for me. But people's whose opinions I respect, enjoy the show. And I love Batman. It might be fun. Like, me and my best friend Lance Laster might want to get together and watch it and do something podcast related with it at some point in time. But that's the only form Always Lonely Gotham would take for me.
Fair enough. Fitting that we spend a minute or two mentioning Gotham, because like so many other comic and other media adaptations, it clearly borrowed heavily from Batman Year One. So
yes,
bringing us back to the heart of our episode here, of course, we're going to be talking about Batman Year One, arguably the definitive Batman origin story and one of the quintessential superhero origin stories generally. Published in late 86 and early 87 in the pages of Batman issues 404 through 407. Written, of course, by Frank Miller, hot off of Dark Knight Returns. So amazing to think about where this fell. And drawn gorgeously by Dave Mazzucchelli. Now, I found a video of him online teaching a class, and he spent the opening moments explaining how to pronounce his name. Now, the Z's in his name are meant to be pronounced like the Z's in the word pizza. So the actual correct Italian pronunciation would be Mazzucchelli. But he said that Mazzucchelli is acceptable. What is not acceptable, he said, is Mazzucchelli. And it kills me because I know at points along the way, I have called him that. And as an Italian American myself, I really have no excuse. And I feel particularly bad because my last name is Desiato. And you can imagine how many mispronunciations I've had in the course of my life. But Mazzucchelli here we'll go with.
Look, you're the guy about the, again, Italian American pronunciations. I too have called him David Mazzucchelli my entire life. So my apologies. So now we know.
There you go. It's funny, as Desiato, I've gotten a lot of DCAtos, things like that, which I can understand because they're working with the letters that are actually there. The ones that always make me laugh are DeSanto, where they change the I to an N, which even that, it's like, okay, maybe the I is playing a little bit of a trick, but my favorite, hands down, and I've gotten this more than once in my life, is Desianato. And I say to myself, my last name has enough letters in it already. Don't add any. It's like, why are we throwing more in here? Amazing. So we'll talk about that comic book storyline, as well as its 2011 animated adaptation. An exceedingly faithful adaptation. Some might even say it's really a translation and not really an adaptation per se. Fun fact, you and I, years before we met, crossed paths in any way, shape, or form, we realized we actually both saw it at its premiere at San Diego Comic-Con 2011.
Yes, San Diego Comic-Con 2011. My aforementioned best friend Lance Laster and I went to San Diego Comic-Con, and it's world premiere of Batman Year One. Well, let's get in line. And I think 70%, this is how Comic-Con worked, San Diego Comic-Con worked back in the day. You get in line, and you just wait all day for stuff. So we got in line hours before.
Yep.
And we ended up standing next to some guy. He ran a comic shop in Australia, and we had, I didn't even get his contact info. I should have. Like, we had a great conversation with this guy for hours. It was so fun. And I mean, it was just an event. It felt really special to go because Batman Year One, a legendary story. Oh, they're making a direct animated movie about it, and so saw the world premiere. And there was the panel with Bryan Cranston and Katie Sackhoff and Ben McKenzie were all there. I mean, that was exciting times, Anthony.
100%. I remember the event well, and I remember that line. I remember there was a person ahead of us in line who was just like splayed out on the floor taking a nap, I think. And I remember I took a photo because I felt like, if anything encapsulated the Comic-Con experience and the fatigue that you must contend with, it definitely is an endurance test. So no, I remember that. It was a lot of fun. And we'll talk more about the movie, obviously. I do think, I think the excitement of being there for the premiere and seeing the cast and the filmmakers, I think kind of propelled me to an even more positive view of the film than I would have later. Not that I dislike it per se, but now I think I have a much clearer sense. And I think that got a bit clouded in the excitement of the moment.
I mean, I think there's something to be said for that. You know, when you see these influencers go to these world premieres, oh my god, it was the most amazing thing I've ever seen. I'm like, well, yeah, because you're caught up in the hype. We were. Do you remember the audience Q&A though they did?
Not specifically.
There was specifically a guy dressed up as Ganthet, like one of the Guardians of Green Lantern, and he was filming himself ask the questions. And Lance and I will never forget that guy. It's like, dude. I know you're excited to get to talk to Bryan Cranston and Katie Sackhoff, but you have to film it all on your phone the whole time. So that's something I distinctly remember. But that was quite an event. That was fun. And there's no guarantee you get in. So that's why you get in line hours before. So it was like an achievement even to be able to get in and get a seat. So
100%.
Small world, man. That's so cool that we were both there at the same place and didn't know each other for years.
Yeah, I know. That is wild. And then we'll segue into Batman Year 2, a quote-unquote sequel in name only, from Detective Comics 575 through 578, published in 87, so not a long gap in time following Year 1. Written by Mike W. Barr. The first issue was drawn by Alan Davis, and then he had a falling out with DC over a redrawn portion of a cover that he did. And so Todd McFarlane, a pre-Spawn Todd McFarlane, stepped in and drew the remaining chapters. And last but certainly not least, we will talk about the 1993 theatrical animated film Batman Mask of the Phantasm, which I don't know if I go so far as to say it's a direct adaptation of Batman Year 2, but it certainly borrows a lot from Year 2, improves upon Year 2 significantly, I think we will argue, and also draws aspects of Year 1 as well. So that I think will really round out this conversation nicely.
Absolutely. I'm looking forward to talking about all these things in their various qualities. Looking forward to talking some Batman with you.
Now, we could have tackled these stories in any number of ways. We could have done separate episodes on Year 1 and Year 2, but Year 1 certainly has been talked about to death over the years. Year 2, I don't know if there's quite as much meat on the bone to really fuel its own episode. For a number of reasons, I thought that these would be interesting to look at together. So I'm glad that we're doing this way. But the other reason why we ended up settling on this approach is DC itself sort of nudged us in this direction, because as part of their line of DC Finest collections, which I'm a huge fan of, and I'm looking at the shelf of them that I have, the growing shelf, they put out a Batman Year 1 and 2 collection within this past year, collecting just a bunch of the post-crisis Batman stories from Batman and Detective, including Year 1 and 2. So it was just, that really solidified kind of my thinking as to tackling them together, because I'm like, oh, okay, we're kind of on the same page with DC as far as Year 1 and 2.
Yeah, it's funny that they did that after all these years, because I feel like Year 2 had been kind of quietly or not so quietly decanonized and like ignored. Everyone says, well, I want to read, I loved Batman Year 1. What do I read next? And everybody says, Batman The Long Halloween.
Right.
And Batman Dark Victory. That's your Batman origin trilogy. Oh, of course. But it's like, no, Year 2 exists, for better or for worse. And they've brought it back into the fold somehow. Again, for better or for worse, there it is. I bought that collection as well, because we were talking about this. I'm like, you know what? I have these both in their own. I actually have my dad's original Batman Year 1 he got back in like 1990 because he wrote his name in it. He did that with books and stuff he would get. I also have his Dark Knight Returns. So Frank Miller fan, I guess everybody was who was into Batman back then. And then I have my own copy of Fear the Reaper, which I got in high school because I was getting into graphic novels again, and I'd reread these and then gotten The Long Halloween, gotten Dark Victory. I'm like, wait a minute, Year 2? What? And like, I gotta have it. So like, I got that, and we'll talk about it, obviously. There is a Batman Year 3, which has been equally ignored, but is slowly coming. There's never been a trade collection of Year 3 until very, very recently, which I do want to pick up at some point. It's just funny that like, yeah, that exists too, but nobody talks about how any of these are connected, because they could not be more disconnected. All these Batman Year fill in the blanks. So
I know, it's really wild. Yes, I am aware there's, I think, a deluxe edition hardcover of Year 3. So yeah, I know these all.
I'm waiting on the paperback before I pick that up, Anthony.
Yeah. But, fair enough. So I have a decent bunch of patron comments and questions that I'll sprinkle in. And kind of while we're talking about this relatively recent collection, this DC Finest book, I want to read something from one of our patrons, Tashmon, because I think this really hits the nail on the head. And I want to get your feedback on this. He says, I've always liked Year 1, but it wasn't until my most recent reread in the DC Finest volume that truly made me consider it an A+ Batman story for me. the whiplash between breezing through lighthearted Adam West-esque tales from Mike W. Barr and Alan Davis and being flung into Miller and Mazzucchelli's grimy, morally gray Gotham gave me a whole new appreciation for what that story was going for. Putting the miniseries in context with all the other Batman books coming out around that same time really shows how much a cut above the rest of it is, or how much a cut above it is from a narrative and stylistic sophistication standpoint.
Cosign, right? I mean, like, we lose perspective, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because the Frank Miller works are the ones that live on into decades and decades, right? So we don't think about, this has come out at a pretty wacky time. Now, to be fair, there was the Neil Adams and Denny O'Neil stuff, so it wasn't totally wackadoodle until Frank Miller showed up. I think they get kind of forgotten because Ra's al Ghul, now that was the 70s, But no, the run-of-the-mill Batman comic was just totally absurd, which that's a great point. Like, this collection shows you that. And then you get to this, and it's like going, and really is, it's like going from Batman and Robin to Batman Begins. So we all experience that in real time with the movies, but that's what happened in comics, and it's the cyclical nature of these characters, right?
100%. No, I'm glad you said that because, to be clear, we recognize we weren't going totally from Adam West type stories to this. That there was a lot of great work that was done along the way. And similarly, right, not to discount the work that the creators did who told these other stories in this very volume, this DC Finest collected edition. But to Tashmon's point, to really see the full context, because I think that we generally, and myself included, I think we tend to look at Crisis as just this hard line in the sand. And it's like, well, after Crisis, boom, we were off and running with Man of Steel and Batman Year One and Perez on Wonder Woman and all of that. And it's like, it took a little while to get everything up and running. I mean, not to always bring it back to Superman, but there were like 6 months between the end of Crisis and Man of Steel. And so you had like this really weird interim period where it was technically the Earth 1 Superman on this newly formed Earth, but Man of Steel hadn't hit yet. Yeah. And similarly here, you open up this volume. Now, I did not read the entire DC Finest volume. I skimmed through all of it, but I did read the first post-crisis Batman issue, 401, which was written by Barbara Kiesel, then Barbara Randall before she got married. And it's a Magpie issue, good old Magpie. And I'm like, oh, here we go. And it was fine. But to Tashmon's point, it's like you get to Batman Year One and it's like, whoa, there is something different going on here. So it was really cool to be able to look at it just in that context. And to remember that it wasn't just this hard restart immediately, that it took a little time for all of this to get going.
I flipped. I did not read every story in there. I will one day.
Sure.
Because I have it. I didn't read every story either. I did see the Magpie issue and was like, what was the deal with the Magpie? Why do we obsess with the Magpie? The Man of Steel miniseries, like, I know what villain we should put Batman and Superman up against together. Magpie. What are we doing? But the 80s, what a crazy time. But no, I do appreciate the variety of stuff in there because stuff that I would never go seek out and read myself, but there it is. So now I can get a real flavor for the other stories of that era.
Exactly. So last big picture thing before we settle in more specifically with Year One, as far as Year One and Year Two, these two comic book stories, I imagine the answer will be different for each of them for you. What place have they occupied? Do they occupy in your wider Batman fandom?
Oh, Batman Year One is definitive. I mean, there's a reason why Frank Miller is people still, despite his most recent works of the last, 30 years, which I look forward to you covering on this podcast. I'm looking forward to that. Because look, I first in line to read All-Star Batman and Robin, and oh my God, The Dark Knight 3, The Dark Knight Strikes Again, all that stuff, right? But he truly in the 80s and in the late 80s there, he made the alpha and omega of Batman. He made Year One and he made Dark Knight Returns. It's funny because, I mean, we were technically, we were born actually around the same time as these things. So they've been around as long as we have. But I think people maybe today might think, oh yeah, he wrote Year One and then he wrote Dark Knight Returns. No, actually the opposite. And that's what's so interesting. He wrote the last Batman story, relatively speaking, everybody knows what I mean when I say that. And the first Batman story. And that's incredible. Like he has such a definitive take on the character. And regardless of what's come next with sequels and all that, it cannot diminish the excellence of these. Like, I look at these like I like the Dark Knight. But not even just the Dark Knight trilogy, the Dark Knight movie itself. Overrated, but also excellent and deserves all the praise you give it. And I kind of think Frank Miller and these works are like that because people act like nothing else can compare to it. I don't know. I mean, there's lots of good stuff, and it is seminal and it is foundational about everything moving forward from the character. And I know Tim Burton famously, like, quote unquote, doesn't read comics and stuff, but he obviously was influenced by these. As much as he was, and then obviously Chris Nolan was way more influenced by these. But Tim Burton took a lot of inspiration from these too for his movies. And these are fan. I kind of I'm equating Dark Knight Returns in year one here, but like these are definitive Batman. Like if you ask somebody, like, I don't know, like, what Batman story should I read? I'm like, I don't know, start with year one. I mean, well, how better to start than year one? And yes, it is more of a Jim Gordon origin story, but that's also really cool because we grew up in the day and age we did. Before this, Jim Gordon was the goofy guy from Batman 66. Oh no, we better call the phone. We can't stop the criminals without you, Batman. This fleshed him out as a character, and really, since then he's been a lot more three-dimensional member of Batman's supporting cast. And I mean, just you can't say enough praise for Frank Miller's year one, right?
I agree wholeheartedly. I was trying to remember, like, when did I first read it? And I can't pinpoint it exactly, but I have to imagine it was late 90s, early 2000s at the latest, but I don't think it was that late. I think this was in the 90s when I hit it, even before I became a full-fledged Batman reader. Mm-hmm. And I mean, I remember loving it from the first time I read year one, and every time I've gone back to it since. I mean, before this recording, it was a few years ago when I revisited Long Halloween, and I wanted to reread year one before, because another series of stories that took a lot of inspiration, took its cues. And then, of course, reread it again for this. And it's just, for me, and even taking into account whatever nostalgia I have for it, it holds up so well. Mm-hmm. It's funny because as of this recording, we've been in the midst of the press tour for the movie The Odyssey. And there was a great moment in an interview with Matt Damon and Tom Holland where Tom Holland revealed he's never seen The Matrix. And Damon had a great response. I mean, first, there was just a lot of disbelief. But this is more of a side piece, but I want to mention, I love Damon's response was like, wow, how lucky you are that you get to experience that fresh. Right? Which I thought was great, because I don't love the typical reaction. Oh, I can't believe you've never seen. It's like, settle down, right? We all have our gaps. So I thought that was a very lovely way of approaching that. But then he said to Tom Holland, he's like, when you do see it, I wonder if it will feel as groundbreaking to you, because you have seen so many films since then that have borrowed from The Matrix. So similarly, I think with year one and Dark Knight Returns, there could be an effect, especially for a younger reader coming to it now for the first time. You've seen so much. Like, if you've watched the Dark Knight trilogy and you've watched the Gotham television series and you've read the Long Halloween saga, maybe this wouldn't hit quite as hard, but I think it is so strong. I think it still holds up. So it's something I love going back to. And I agree with you. It's as much Gordon's story as it is Bruce's. Arguably, it's more so Gordon's story. I mean, I feel like if you really tally it up, he might...
Gordon year one, yeah.
He might have more page time.
He is the bigger. I mean, it's hard to say. I mean, we're talking about it now, right? It's hard to say, like, does he have the bigger character arc? I don't know. Bruce Wayne becomes Batman in this. That's a pretty big character arc, but yeah, I mean, they're. I think that's what's so great about Batman Begins. Like, it really dialed into that. Like, you just one man, now we're two. Like, that equates them as partners, and they don't say that in so many words in year one, but that's what this do, because they don't interact at all. Right, until the very end, and they don't even, Can I say something about the very end, by the way?
I know what you're going to say. Go for it.
Thank you. So my entire life, I've read this graphic novel, this Batman Year One standalone graphic novel that came out in the late 80s that my dad had. And the very last page is Batman, what I thought, right, was Batman jumping in front of the bat. I hold it up for no one to see but you. They use this as the promotional artwork for the movie we're going to talk about, by the way. Commissioner Gordon says, I got a friend coming who might be able to help. Should be here any minute. He's on the roof of presumably Gotham PD. In my mind, I thought, oh, he's waiting on the roof, and he turned the bat signal on, and this is like, right? I'm like, oh, that's incredible. What an incredible way to end Batman Year One. Anyway, my whole life I thought that. And I got this collection this year one and year two, DC. What's the series, Anthony?
DC Finest.
Thank you. DC Finest collection. And I reread year one and year two in this because it's like, oh, look, I'm reading it in a different format and that sort of thing. By the way, the year one original graphic novel I had has this recoloring, and the DC Finest has the original coloring, and I much prefer the recoloring. But anyway, it's the reverse of the Killing Joke. If anyone knows what I'm talking about, I like the original more than the redo in the Killing Joke, vice versa here. Anyway, I get to the end of Batman Year One, and it's the Gordon thing on the roof, and then it's like the next page is some silly Adam West era Batman story. I'm like, whoa. Why did they take out the last page of Batman Year One? And then everyone online said, no, you've been reading it wrong your whole life. That was an extra page they added for the graphic novel. That's not part of the story. And my worldview is shattered, Anthony, about this about this story.
I saw those posts. My heart went out to you. It's one of those things. I mean, I don't know that I ever thought about it one way or the other. The thing is, though, I know at some point along the way, I've bought and sold so many comics and trades over the years. At some point, I did own the original issues of Batman Year One. And so I would have read it at least once in its original form without that added page. So maybe because of that, I've never necessarily thought that was the final page of the story. I think if you had asked me, or if you put it in front of me, I would have said, no, I think that's just a pinup. It's not meant to be like he's literally there on the roof. But like in your defense, when you read it like that in the trade, I mean, it can, I think that's a reasonable read on it. That like, now Batman's there on the roof.
I thought, and thinking about this further, because in these conversations I've had with people, like, why did I think this? Like, again, I mentioned it a couple of times now, growing up in the 90s, every Batman movie ends with the bat signal or Batman running in front of the bat signal in the Schumacher movies. The animated movies usually end with Batman and a bat signal. So I'm like, well, this is what we do. To the point that even Batman Begins retroactively, like, it's the scene on the roof of them together. So I don't know. Obviously, I'm wrong. that was an added page. I understand that. I just think they kind of fell into a perfect, like, I don't know, this is a nice ending. It's nice to see, it's nice to see Batman as the last page of Batman Year One. Because you know what, Anthony? Like, it's not Commissioner Gordon Year One. It's Batman Year One.
But once again, in your defense, like I have to imagine some thought went into the placement of that specific pinup at the very end. I mean, whether it was an explicit choice of like, we're adding, like, again, I don't think they were necessarily saying internally at DC, we are adding a story page and this is now I don't think so, but I have to imagine that there's some thought as they're putting together that collected edition about what effect it's going to have to see Batman in the light like that right after Gordon is talking about calling Batman. So I think that's a reasonable interpretation.
The last thing I will say is on this recolored graphic novel version I have, there's no the end at the end of the Gordon panel. There is on the original comics, which have been recollected in the DC Finest collection. And I'm like, that's what it really triggered me. Like, the end. Anyway, I'm sorry we went on that tangent. That's a total personal thing of mine, but I guarantee you there's people out there like me who've always thought this.
I'm sure. So. No, you think about how many people have read Year One, the number who have read it in its collected form versus in single issue form, or even now in the DC Finest edition. It's like, I'm sure the number who have read that collected edition with that pinup page, it dwarfs everyone else. So yeah, I'm sure there are a lot of people who probably have a similar view. So,
well, thank you for indulging me with that.
Absolutely.
Let me take one half step back. You asked me about these, well, particularly this story, and I made that comparison to the Dark Knight being overrated. And like, because I say this because, these things are great and you get distance from them. And then you're like, I don't know, are these overrated? Because everybody says, like, what's the best Batman movie? The Dark Knight. What's the best Batman story? Year One. You're like, be more creative. Come on, right? But then you go back and you read it, like, no, this really is the best. This deserves its reputation. So I just want to make that clear. And hopefully you understand what I mean about the overrated discussion. You know what I mean?
I understand. And I think I talked about this in our pilot episode. I know that my mileage initially was a bit more limited on Dark Knight Returns. Like as a kid, I always remember gravitating more towards Year One and feeling like Dark Knight Returns was a bit overrated. Maybe for that reason that I had at that point read other stories that were informed.
Oh, Batman fights Superman, what an original idea, right? Yeah.
So maybe there was a little bit of that going on, but yeah, for whatever reason that didn't happen with Year One. I couldn't exactly tell you why, but so I think, that can sometimes be a play. And I think there's also, not to try to psychoanalyze all of us as fans, but at least for myself, maybe sometimes there's a sense of not wanting it to be the case that something that came out 40 years ago, like, can't be improved upon. Do you know what I mean? Because then it's like, well, that's as good as it's going to get.
Dude, you're talking to Mr. Superman the movie over here. I totally know how you feel. I'm like, well, that's perfection. How come? I mean, obviously it's not there are ways to improve on it. I have yet to see it improved on in the complete package. I would like to see it improved on. That's my take on it anyway. And that's where it's like, are you really telling me that there's never going to be a Batman movie better than The Dark Knight? I'm like, I don't know. Live action Batman movie. We'll get to that.
Right.
But that's what it is, right? I mean, it's almost like saying, Anthony, your pilot is your best episode, and nothing's better than the pilot. To quote our friends Tom and Michael from Talkville.
So I think there's a little bit of that phenomenon going on psychologically. I really think so. But no, I mean, for me as well. I mean, I look at Batman Year One as the definitive quintessential Batman origin story, and I think for what it did at the time and the way it holds up today. Truly groundbreaking and a fantastic story. And certainly we can throw around the words, realistic or grounded. And sure, there's that. But I think what really makes this work, number one, making a Gordon story along with Bruce's story. I think ultimately that's the masterstroke of this work, is that it was both of these guys. But hand in hand with that, more so than it being grounded or realistic, it was personal. And I think that's what truly elevates this work. And you get to follow these two guys as they're figuring out how to operate in this corrupt, broken, crime-ridden city. And clearly they go about it in different ways. Yet over the course of the story, both realize they need each other. Despite that lack of actual interaction, like you're saying, it's more the idea of each other and what they hear and see about each other. But so I think that's it. I think it's that personal approach and showing how they're navigating the city and ultimately coming to this realization that they need each other. And kind of piggybacking off of what you were saying before, Denny O'Neil wrote the introduction to the collected edition and talked about how the project came to be. And exactly to your point, like Frank Miller, he had done the Omega, now he wanted to do the Alpha. And O'Neil also talked in that intro about how with other heroes, Superman being a prime example, there was a lot of continuity cleanup that they wanted to do. They were really going to revamp the origin. And we did a great episode of Digging for Kryptonite, the 250th. You and I built the perfect Superman origin. We answered 20 plus questions about how to build a perfect Superman origin, which really highlighted how many changes there had been to the Superman side over the years. Whereas with Batman, as O'Neil talks about, the origin was in good shape as far as the beats of it, but it was more about fleshing it out and delving in deeper. And that's what you see here.
Yeah. To the point where DC they've been so hesitant to, even when they reboot everything, like, oh, we got to keep Batman Year One, right? So they really held off on 0 year. I don't know if you're ever going to get to that one day on this podcast.
We'll get there.
I'm like, I love that initial Scott Snyder, Greg Capullo run on Batman. I think each arc got progressively not as good. But I'm like, oh, you're going to replace Year One with that? So that's why they don't replace Year One, because how do you improve on perfection? You can't. So they're like, yeah, this is canon, So there it is. I mean, and I think you're so right about having the dual stories, because if it's just, that's what makes it fresher than, another Superman origin, which we love Superman origins, to your point earlier. But it's like, he lands in the Kints, and how is he going to get the job at the Daily Planet? What's his first save going to be? It's all the same kind of course. If you really did something unique with Superman, maybe you had Lex Luthor and Superman have a dual origin together. I think that'd be a fresh take.
Amazing.
Just a thought. But yeah, is this what really made Gotham City a character for the first time? Maybe with, again, they're so married to each other, but I know Dark Knight Returns and this did that, but I feel like that's when Gotham City started to be a character instead of like, well, it's New York, but Batman's in it. That was Gotham City up till now, right?
I think that's fair to say. We might have some audience members correct us on that, but yeah, I mean, I think so. And really leaning into the organized crime side and the police corruption. I mean, yeah, the fact that you have 4 issues here with nary a costumed villain in sight, and the story still works beautifully. Really, really highlights, I think, the different kinds of stories that you can tell.
I do want to shout out Dave Mazzucchelli. His artwork here, and I know our mutual friend Matt Truex has said that he's told me that Dave Mazzucchelli is the reason he wanted to be an artist. Like the reason he got into, like, the first thing he drew of Batman was Dave Mazzucchelli's Batman. And just, it's incredible art. And it's such a shame that, like, these guys didn't do, like, I don't know, like 100 issues.
I know.
Because this is an incredible, like, 4 issues. Could you, like, do, like, could you do a year? Could you do 2 years? Because it's just so, and that's what's funny about Dark Knight Returns versus this, like, Frank Miller, writer and artist. This he let someone else draw, which is probably the best idea. Although I do really enjoy the Dark Knight Returns artwork. Over time, it gets less as impressive when Frank Miller. But this is how I saw it. I mean, Batman in this, he looks like the Adam West Batman to me, Anthony.
Oh, interesting. I mean, I don't know that I would have jumped to that, but I do see what you're saying. But yeah, I mean, yeah, the fact that Miller didn't write and draw this, notable. And I mean, it's one of those things, yeah, to your point, the Frank Miller, the artist of the late 80s, different than the Frank Miller of today. So it's like, I mean, I think it certainly could have worked had he handled both duties here, but no, I wouldn't trade this Mazzucchelli art for anything. So I'm so glad that Miller just wanted to write. And it also works great where, yeah, Batman and his world look and feel differently at the beginning than they'll do decades later in Dark Knight Returns. So it works on that level as well. But yeah, this note of the origin itself not really needing to be tweaked, but we really just want to flesh it out. I went back and I took another look at Detective Comics 33, the first time that we got the actual origin in 2 pages.
Oh, yeah, okay.
And dude, all the beats are there. The Waynes coming out of the theater, Thomas and Martha, though she's not named at that point, getting gunned down, Bruce making his vow, devoting himself to his physical, mental, scientific perfection, and the bat crashing through the window, giving him the idea to instill fear by using that symbol. Like, and I don't want to say, oh, the origin has never changed. We've certain things have shifted over the years. Whether or not it's Joe Chill who's the murderer, that's probably the biggest piece of this that comes and goes depending on which iteration we're talking about. But those essential elemental beats were all there. You know, we talked about Action Comics #1. There's no Kents. Like, he has no parents who raised him there. But here with Detective Comics, like, all of that is intact. So yeah, just kind of interesting, especially comparing the two characters and the different permutations of the origin. What was there, what wasn't, you know?
It is shocking to me we have never had in live action that scene of the bat crashing through the window. Although I think, honestly, it's an improvement. What we do get in live action, Batman Forever, you know, falling in the cave, then, of course, BVS carries that. Batman Begins, the well. Like, I think that imagery works so much, but, like, he's falling into the bat cave and the bats, like, that's an improvement. Like, I don't even want to see the bat crash through the window and land on the bust of his dad. I think that's kind of, like, we moved past that and improved it. I'd be interested to see it, but I don't think we need it.
I want it.
You want it? Okay.
I really do. And in Morrison's run, Morrison really kept going back to that moment of the bat crashing through. And to me, there's something very mythic and elemental about the crashing of the bat. And that's, if I had to pick one favorite moment from year one, I don't know that it would be that scene in the study, but that scene.
Now I feel bad. I'm like, I don't need this. You're like, this is my favorite moment of the entire story.
It's really up there because, and I know I'm plunging us into the story, but that's fine. And look, this is one story. I'm confident the audience knows what we're talking about as we jump around here. But I felt like that first issue, but especially that scene after Bruce had his first night out and his army vet get up and he gets stabbed and shot and he fails. He wasn't able to instill that fear yet. He has the means, he has the resources, he doesn't have the method yet. And he's sitting there in that study and he's talking to his father. And there's this impatience, right? He talks about how he's like, I've waited 18 years. Like, I can't wait any longer. Debating whether or not to call Alfred to patch him up. And then he gets this sign with the bat crashing through. There's something very powerful about it. Now, to your point, I actually think the falling in the well and the bat crashing through, they work together because when you go back to Detective 33, where it's just the bat crashing through and it's like, oh, I guess I'll be Batman. It's like, I mean, okay. You thematically, right? You really want to tie that bat crashing through to this childhood fear that he had. And we get that here through the narration. And Dark Knight Returns had shown us that moment of him falling and being scared by the bat. So I think
that's right. I give it to Batman Forever. Batman Forever took that. I'm sorry, excuse me. Batman Forever took that from the Dark Knight Returns, I should say. Yes.
It's all good. No, I mean, but so that's what I think really makes this work. And the fact that there are bats flying around the manor, it's like, well, there's a bat cave underneath. So I'm okay with that. And so
they nest them right here on the grounds.
Yeah. And so the idea that the bat crashes through and it reminds Bruce of this childhood fear that he has, that we're told about here. We don't see that flash, but we're told about it. That I think works great. Like just this sign from the universe or from Thomas,
Interesting.
however you want to look at it, that
Okay.
that points him in this direction. So
But
I
this
love
is
that
supposed to
aspect.
be a grounded, gritty story, Anthony.
I know, but I think there's room for a little bit of that, not magic per se, but just
Okay.
kind of a little bit of that flair. Now, you mentioned this idea of like, oh, it would have been great if Miller and Mazzucchelli could have done more issues. I mean, I agree wholeheartedly. A big fan of their Daredevil Born Again as well. But we had another question / comment here from a patron. Brian Dempsey says, I like the fact that Batman Year One is actually covering one calendar year. The legacy of this story title is that Year One has become shorthand to say, here's an origin story, but they aren't actually a 12-month span. I find it tedious at this point. And then he continues, if this story were published today, how many issues do you think DC would expect? 6? 12? And is there any part you wish we could have spent more time on?
Ooh.
So I definitely think this would not be a 4-parter today. But at the same time, there is such an efficiency of storytelling. These scenes are short and punchy, and they move. It's funny because I remember the beats of the story pretty well at this point. And so as I'm reading it, I'm like, oh yeah, like this still has to come up. And boom, it just hits you, and then you're on to the next thing. So there's such an efficiency and that tight, punchy pace to it that, yeah, I think if this were to happen now, it would be longer. I don't know that that's necessarily for the best.
I totally agree. First of all, about Year One being like, slap a Year One on it. I'm like, well, that means a prequel or an origin story. Like this was literally the first calendar year of Batman, or at least Bruce Wayne's return to Gotham. And you're so right about like these big moments. Sarah Essen and Gordon's affair is like a few pages. It's so late in the story and then it's gone, but it has huge ramifications. There's something to be said about leaving you wanting more, right? And, would we have wanted this to go on and on and on? No, but we love it so much. We could have, we want more of it, but there's something about how there's like almost no format to the amount of time they spend anywhere. Because you can jump ahead like a day, a week, 2 months. Like it kind of keeps you like guessing, and it doesn't feel like you're, oh, okay, now it's March. And it's like, no, it's like June 1st, July 18th or whatever, right? I mean, that's very refreshing.
I agree. I mean, that's the other thing is that I was clocking as I was going through. It's like you really are jumping around. Then you get to chapter 3 where Batman is trapped in the building and the police are after him. And the vast majority of that issue is that scene of him trapped. So that one really slowed down the pace and really kept you in this moment where he's confined. But otherwise, yeah, you're really jumping around. As far as Brian's question about, is there anything we would have wanted to spend more time on? I've had these questions, so this has been marinating a little bit. So I'll go first then if there's anything that comes to your mind. There were 2 things, and I'm torn on one of them. The one where I think it would have been cool to see how this happened in the context of this specific story is Batman's alliance with Harvey Dent. Because we get that moment, I think it's in the 2nd chapter, where Gordon is in Dent's office and they're talking, and Gordon's suspicious of Dent, and he's got the weights and all that. And Gordon leaves, and then you see Batman there hiding behind the desk, and Dent's like, all right, you can come out now. And the reason why I think it would have been interesting to see how that comes to be is because when you get to the end of the 3rd issue, after Batman's been trapped and he has this horrible encounter, he gets to that point where he's like, I need Gordon. I can't do this alone. Can't help but feel that's slightly undercut by the fact that, well, he's already in cahoots with the assistant district attorney. It doesn't ruin anything for me. But I think seeing how that piece kind of fell into place in this story, I think that's a thing that I would have liked to have seen.
Yeah, and it's like all the things that I wanted expanded, like Jeff Loeb and Tim Sale took care of years later, right? Catwoman, the Roman, Harvey Dent, like all that stuff is taken care of there. So we take it for granted, but no, absolutely. It is a nice kind of reversal of things you see later where he goes to Dent first. And, I do think the way I saw it is like Dent let him know, like, okay, hey, here are the major players you need to go after, right? Like the Roman, for example. That's why Gordon's like, so looks like, Carmen Falcone, you tried to, get him in trouble and it didn't stick. And so it's like, obviously he turns Batman onto like that way. And so that's how I saw their relationship. But yeah, I would have loved to, like, give us a 5th issue and some more stuff like that. I would say, and I don't know, not to Chris Nolan everything, because there is something to be said for Tim Burton's way of things, where it's all made a mystery. But like, okay, so how did you build the suit and the belt and the car? I don't need to see every step, but it's like he goes from I must become a bat to now he's Batman, right? So a little bit more, I love the stuff in Batman Begins with Bruce and Alfred ordering the stuff and testing the things, and a little bit more of that. In an origin story, you would kind of expect that, I guess. So that's what I would expand if I could.
That's the funny thing. And I guess it kind of goes to this question of, well, what is an origin story, or what does an origin story need to accomplish? Because you're right, that's kind of a crazy piece to completely jump over. And look, I think even before we saw things like Batman Begins, you can kind of fill in the gaps, and especially now in a modern context, we've seen this fleshed out in other ways, like you're saying. But yeah, I mean, to just kind of jump over that, we could have spent more time there. It's also interesting because that core defining moment of the Waynes being murdered, it's a page.
Yeah.
Here, it's not like we spend a lot of time there. It's just that moment as he's recalling how long he's waited, right? As he's sitting there in the study, and that favorite moment of mine. And we go back to that. So yeah, it's interesting, I think, where like what this story leans into and what it kind of, and where it demonstrates some restraint. And overall, I do kind of admire that. And I think, look, I don't know exactly what Miller and Mazzucchelli were intending in the moment of making this, but I think there is something to be said for leaving some space for other creators to come in, as they would then do.
Right. Totally. So I think, this is how it kind of inspired Tim Burton's Batman movie, because that's totally left open there. Like, why is he Batman? Like, I don't know, because they're great survivors. He tells Vicky Vale. That's it. That is the only explanation of why he is Batman in those films. But it works. You don't need it. Like, all of Frank Miller's instincts were correct. Like, we can question, like, oh, it would have been cool to see this or that, or why did we not see this or that? But like, that totally works. Like, when you're reading it, you never like, oh man, well, wait a minute. How did we get here? You're never asking yourself that, because you're caught up in the personal stakes of the story, as you said earlier.
I guess along those lines, the one other thing that came to mind when I was reading Brian's question, and this is where I say I'm kind of torn on it. And ultimately I don't think I would go down this road, but what I thought of was more of Jim's home life with Barbara. But I talked myself out of it, because here's what I think would happen. I feel like you have one of two options. If you show more of the tension at home, like if she's nagging him, then you are not absolving him, but you're making it a bit more understandable that he strayed. And that doesn't do Barbara any favors. And I don't think that's ultimately good for the overall story. I want to talk more about that. Yes. Alternatively, it's like if you show more of the positives of his home life, and we do get that scene where she's massaging him. Yeah. And it's like, wow, this is wonderful. Well, then he just looks worse for straying. So I feel like it's kind of a lose-lose on that front. And this is a perfect segue, because I want to ask you about Jim Gordon's infidelity. Like, while we're talking about the personal side and everything, because this is another patron submission that we had from Chase, who says, I love Dark Knight Returns, but year one, not as much. I understand it's also very influential, and I enjoy a good, grounded Batman story with him going up against organized crime. However, I think Miller went too edgy with the surrounding characters. Gordon cheating on his wife never sat right with me. He should be a pillar of good in Gotham. And Catwoman looking after Holly, but not immediately removing her from that situation is wrong. The art is iconic, though. How do you feel about Jim? Because I am a defender of this story choice, but I'm going to get your take. Well,
I definitely wanted to talk about this, so I'm glad the question has been posed and we can dive into it here. Rewatching and the movie and rereading this, I thought, man, if they did this today, people would be pissed. They'd be like, "How dare you tear down a pillar of morality like Jim Gordon? He ruined his character assassination," they'd say. And I would say, like, but was Jim Gordon a character before this? I mean, like, was he? So I'd say that's what makes him such an interesting guy, because he can, say no to police corruption and, oh no, that's wrong. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to internal affairs, turn him in here and this sort of thing. And so he's this, you think he's this beacon of light in a world of darkness, but you know what? He's got his own demons, as everyone does. No one is perfect, right? Everybody has their vice, where they're going to slip up. That's sort of their weaknesses, right? This is his. And that's such a great thing you mentioned about the home life, because you're right. They leave it such a blank canvas, or blank slate, I should say. I don't know, whatever the term might be. You kind of just project or don't project anything onto it. So you don't, again, all of Frank Miller's instincts were correct here, because if you see too much, too little, you might form an opinion. Gordon is very self-aware what he's doing is wrong, but he does it anyway. I mean, that's so interesting. The guy that needs to team up with the hero to save the city has a really screwed up personal life. I think that's just a brilliant decision.
Yeah, I agree. I think you lose something if you remove that aspect of the story, because building off of what you were saying, it's like, yeah, he is this paragon of virtue in the professional context, and he doesn't succumb to this corruption that everyone around him, starting with Flass and going all the way up to the commissioner, fall into. So there's something to be said for that. You see his virtue in that respect, but yes, it creates a more dynamic character where there are failings in other areas, but also. So yeah, if you take that away, then he's just perfect. I don't think that's as interesting. But then when you get to the part deep into the story where he's the hero cop, he's getting all the great press, he's kind of riding high, and Loeb kind of smacks him back down to earth when he reveals the photos that have been taken of Gordon and Essen. And now this really creates a dilemma, because he can continue on his heroic crusade as the hero cop and root out this corruption. But if he does, now he runs the risk of his home life blowing up. And now you really present him with the choice. And the story then shows his heroism, for lack of a better term, in revealing what he's been up to his wife. Like, that's such a powerful moment where they're leaving Wayne Manor after talking to Bruce. And he stops the car and he's like, I got to tell you something. And, you know, you and I both married men. I imagine neither of us gotten down that road, but like, you can imagine, like, I read a scene like that, or you watch it in the movie or whatever it is, and it's like, oh my God, like, how impossibly hard must that, and I don't mean to paint Gordon as the victim in this, to be clear, but still, to take that moment, to have to share that.
Yeah, he owned it. Yeah, he owned it.
He owned it, and then they didn't have that lever to use against him.
Right.
So I think, I would not lose this. And yeah, it dirties him up a bit, but you know, I think it's ultimately worth it. And I mean, then they would go on to be married. And then we talked about Essen in our second episode on No Man's Land, because she meets a grisly end at the hand of the Joker at the end of that storyline. So yeah, I don't know. I would not take that out. I think that's really an important piece here.
That's huge. I mean, that's because you're right. Like, then he becomes like the just 2-dimensional stereotypical, you know, square-jawed hero who's here to set the town right. You know, that's not. I mean, look, we love Superman. We love that he's the paragon of virtue and morality and truth and justice. But in this story, in the Batman universe, right, the Jim Gordon character, I think this enhances the character.
Yeah, absolutely. And he's got plenty of hero moments. I mean, when he intervenes in that hostage situation.
Oh yeah.
I mean, that was amazing.
People are complicated. I mean, that's what's so great about it. People are complicated. There are shades of good and bad in everybody, and this totally epitomizes that. So that's why it's such a strong choice to me.
I also love throughout the story, Gordon has these moments of revenge, we'll call them. Some big, some small. Like when Brendan, right? Like the SWAT leader,
team guy.
Right? Yeah. The overzealous, right? When he's going after Batman in that building, and Gordon's not lifting a finger at that point when things are kind of falling apart. He's like, oh, well, wish we could help.
Orders are orders.
Orders are orders, right? Things like that. But in that first issue, the beatdown that he suffers at the hands of Flass and these other corrupt cops. And then in that same, this is one of those things I think I had forgotten the placement, because I thought that revenge came later, but nope. It's like that same night. I love that. I mean, it's amazing. And forcing Flass to drop his gun, but then tossing Flass the bat. Yeah. It's like he's giving him that advantage.
He deserves a handicap.
Yeah. And then Gordon still kicks his ass, strips him, ties him up. This is where I really saw kind of a connection point to the Gotham TV series, because Gordon there, and that was a younger Gordon in that, but still, like, he was always busting heads. Like, it was great. That was one of my favorite aspects of the show. So yeah, it was cool to kind of see that more action oriented Gordon. I mean, he really gets into it in this, which was cool.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And like that's why I think it's maybe the Gordon story sticks out more to us here, because we have so much of the Bruce story everywhere else. And this is, I mean, there are bits of it, obviously, right? The Bruce Wayne's journey. But here, this is like the Commissioner Gordon story. Like, obviously there have been more, but like, you know what I'm saying? Like that's why this sticks out more than Bruce's, maybe, even though they're pretty equal in importance here.
Yeah. I mean, the fact that the story opens with the both of them arriving to Gotham, right? Gordon by train and realizing this is no way to see the city. And he's glad that Barbara flew. And then Bruce flying in, and he's like, it looks clean from up here. Like I should have gone in and seen the enemy. Yeah.
That's the thing, right? Frank Miller's voice for Batman is so perfect, because when you read, because we've all read stories. I'm like, I don't know. I don't think Batman would say that, or that doesn't sound like Superman to me. Like this, I'm like, this is absolutely what Batman would say. Like even goofy versions of Batman, or even like I think universally, like I can see any Batman saying the things the Frank Miller Batman says here and in Dark Knight Returns, and it's just clear, like it's totally in character with itself, and it's like, yeah, this guy has a worldview. This is how he thinks. This is so insightful, and I love it. And that's the kind of, I'm not saying Frank Miller's Batman is my Batman, but I love that interpretation of the character. There's a reason why it's so iconic.
Yeah, and it's infused so many other subsequent stories we've read and watched, even though they've taken their own spins on the material, right? But still, I think so much of it can be traced back to that.
I love on Gordon, though. I think, does he know Bruce Wayne's Batman at the end? It's like almost like an out where it's like, can't really see without my glasses. And it's like, that's such a nice wiggle room where you're like, and that's where I want for it to exist. I don't want to know. Yes. Either way, but I think that's a wonder. Maybe he'd never even. Maybe at the time it was intended of. Oh, now that's why he doesn't know he's Batman. But now we look back and we can say, I don't know. Could he really not see without his glasses? Does he really not know it's Bruce Wayne? I love that.
Okay, so I'm so glad you brought this up. We're getting there, so let's get there. This is great. So in that final issue where baby James is kidnapped, right? Falcone gives the order after he's been scratched up by Catwoman, and there's this moment where he gives the order to his nephew, and he's like. Regarding Gordon, he's like, once a man becomes a father, he's never truly free.
Dark.
And reading that now as a dad, I would say I identify with that. I wouldn't. That's a negative spin on it, and I don't feel that way. But yeah, there is a sense that like once you have a child, like there's something that never gets turned off. Mm-hmm. So something like that really kind of hit home, but in a positive way, not the way it's described here. But it was a couple of things stood out. One, the fact that this happens in the daytime, or as day is breaking, I suppose. And Bruce has the line to Alfred. It's like, no, like never in the day, never the bat suit in the day. So the fact that you have Bruce without his costume in this, which is an interesting choice, especially for a Batman Year One story like that. He's performing this ultimate
the climax. Yeah. It's Bruce, which is interesting. Like the quick aside, there's a famous deleted sequence for Batman '89, Tim Burton's Batman, where Bruce like puts on a ski mask and chases the Joker on a horse. And I always thought, well, that's weird. Why would they do that? And I'm like, oh, well, this must have inspired that. In my opinion, this climax of Year One must have inspired that, because otherwise, why would you do that? That's weird.
Yeah, I know it's an interesting choice. And then so you get to that moment, like you were saying, where Bruce hands over the baby to James, to Gordon, who's lost his glasses, and he has this line about like I can't see without my glasses. Now, here's what's interesting. I'm jumping to the movie here because I feel like the animated movie played it in a much winkier way, for lack of a better term, because it's subtle. But when Gordon says that, I feel like there's something in Gordon's voice that kind of leaves a little room. And then Bruce has, it's not a full on smile, but there's a little bit of like the curling up of a lip or the hint of a smile. I feel like the movie was kind of playing with that exact idea that you're talking about. Okay. I don't know that the book itself really gives you that, maybe, but I think the movie does. But that's my interpretation. Like, I really think in that moment, Gordon knew who he was looking at, but he has plausible deniability, and they're going to leave it at that. That's forever my reading. Also,
Gordon's wife saw him in the parking garage. I mean, I guess he was in the shadows,
I think,
Your son will die.
Yeah. So I think that was the intention, but I love that reading and that aspect. I guess maybe a few more things to say on the Bruce side, but as far as Gordon in Year One, anything else that we haven't talked about that we want to talk about?
No, I mean it was definitely direct correlation to the Gary Oldman Commissioner Gordon or Gordon and the Dark Knight trilogy, and rightfully so. Right? I mean, just this was what. And look, I am no Batman comic book scholar, even less so than I'm a Superman comic book scholar. But to me, this is what made Commissioner Gordon a character.
Yeah. I have not. Have you ever read the Gordon of Gotham miniseries?
No, I have not.
It's on my list now because it's essentially a prequel to Year One. And it came, I think, late 90s, I want to say, unless I'm totally whiffing on that.
Is him in Chicago doing this?
Yeah. And it's interesting because I think you can get enough of the pieces here. There's enough hinted at that there's been some business that he's trying to escape now as he comes to Gotham. And we do get the sense he has taken down a dirty cop in the past, and that's kind of hanging over him. But yeah, I'll be curious to ultimately get to that and dive into a little bit more.
That intrigues me. I mean, it's all peripheral to this, but that intrigues me because it's like I do want to know what I'd watch a show about a young Commissioner Gordon. Always hold on to Gotham.
There you go. We sold him on it. But yeah, so I love the Gordon piece, and then on the Batman side, we've already hit on a lot, but I guess this goes back to one of the things I said in our first episode and keeps coming up. I just that common criticism of Batman, he's just like too ultra capable and everything. It's like, I don't know. Like, this is another instance that I feel knocks that down because you see the fallibility here. You see his failings in those initial outings. I mean, we talked about that first night on the streets before he even has the costume. But then when he goes out for the first time in that costume and he's stopping that robbery on the balcony and he's dealing with those three guys and one of them just, instantly falls off. So now he's got to save this guy's life. And the other one is just kicking the crap out of him. The other one bashes the TV over his head. Yeah. It's like, you really see how quickly things can go wrong, or you see him realize how quickly things can go wrong in these missteps that he's making.
Lucky amateur.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
no, I love because the Bat God kind of criticism is so true because it's like, what's more realistic, an alien who has superpowers or a human who can do anything and is smarter than anyone? It's like, I don't know, maybe Superman's more realistic, but I like this Batman where he's not quite Bat God. Talking about, as we're talking about this stuff here, I'm flipping through year one here. These covers are like, these are incredible. Yeah. Like, they've got him cornered. They've got him outnumbered. They've got him trapped. They're in trouble. Like, that is incredible. I want a poster of every chapter of this and put it on my wall. That's just incredible stuff. Hype is real for Batman Year One. I love how it's shocking to me that The Batman was the first Batman movie that, you know what, maybe we'll have Bruce like writing a journal and we'll have some narration. I'm like, yeah, like that's incredible. Like, that's what you should do more with Batman because he's coming out. So the film noir world, the detective story, like, that's such an amazing component that no other live action version has really had. I mean, you have some narration in some other Batman movies, but it's not quite Bruce doing a journal like that. And I think I would love to see more, more of that in the Batman Part 2 in other versions too. Like, I think you get an insight to the character you don't otherwise get, because that's how you have to choose. Like, is he this mysterious creature of the night like Tim Burton? It's like, oh man, heard he drinks blood and that sort of thing, or is he like, oh, we're gonna see every piece of him assembling his origin like Chris Nolan? And I think they're all valid, but I think that's so cool to because I think he's the kind of guy that would take notes because he wants to train and improve himself and study the things he's done, his failures, his successes, like that totally tracks that he would go home and write this stuff down. And I mean, I don't, again, not a Batman comic historian, but I feel like this might have been one of the first times they really made that to its full potential,
Yeah, I mean, anyone who listens to my shows knows I'm a proponent of narration more often than not, because I think that device can be helpful, and especially with a character like Batman, who as Batman doesn't speak a lot. Mm-hmm. It is a way for us to get that insight, and it could take different forms. It can be more of the self-reflective journal. It can be more case oriented, right? More about whatever he's investigating. But even if it's kind of more mechanical or scientific or procedural, it still reveals something about the character in terms of how he's approaching it. Mm-hmm. So I like that. Unless, like you're saying, I mean, if it is a choice if you don't have Batman speak a lot and you're also not doing the narration and you are creating more of a distance between the character and the audience and this air of mystery. And there can be value in that, but no, I'm so glad that we had the dual narration here of Bruce and Gordon. I thought that was fantastic. So I think we've hit I guess one other key piece is when he interrupts the dinner. Yes. Right, with the city higher ups and the organized crime members. You've eaten well. I'm good with what we get here. We talked about how subsequent creators flesh out a lot. Kevin Smith's addition to the proceedings, where Batman was so scared he was pissing his pants. No, we can leave that to the side.
I was wondering if that would come up. Yeah, I was like, oh, Kevin, that's so Kevin Smith. But did we need to do that? But yeah. Does it bother you that there's no like big villain or big climax? I mean, kind of touched on it's an interesting choice to have the climax have just Bruce Wayne in a motorcycle helmet as opposed to Batman. I know that's what kind of sets this apart. Like, I'm not saying that, oh, that's why it's good. I'm saying that's what sets it apart. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, you didn't fight the Joker at the end of this or something. Like, the tease is perfect. That's why Batman Begins took it. But this is year one. This is the mob. This is what he's dealing with here.
Yeah, and the corrupt police commissioner. And I feel like it builds enough to, like, you see enough of the lead up to the baby being kidnapped as kind of this final means to get Gordon under control. And I feel like there's enough there. Yeah, it doesn't fall. And I guess maybe this will lead us into the movie discussion. I think we even have a patron comment that kind of gets at that. You know, whether this works literally translated into a movie structure, debatable. But I think in the context of this story, especially when it is more of this character study, I know, it's funny. I keep saying I don't want to bring it back to Superman. We're going to always bring it back to Superman in some way, shape, or form. But we're like, think about something like For All Seasons, which also covers a year, but we're more strictly confined to the seasons there. But there too, it's more of this emotional telling. And there's no big bad there either, though Lex has a role, but it's not like, it builds to a big battle, right? You're following the character's journey. And so I think the structure of Batman Year One, it allows for that. So yeah, I'm glad that we landed where we did with this. All right, a few more patron comments and then we'll get into the movie here. So let's see. Brian actually had another one. He said, something no one ever seems to discuss is that the Batman Year One issues were published without the Comics Code seal of approval. It makes sense. There's overt prostitution, murder with blood, and infidelity. But it was still a big deal to publish without the code in 1987. I'm impressed DC went for it. Yeah, right on. Fair enough. I mean, I don't know if that would have been on my radar, so I'm glad Brian brought that up.
On fire in the 80s. Watchmen, The Dark Knight Returns, and Batman Year One. The three greatest graphic novels of all time came out in like a 5-year span in the late 80s. So good on you, DC.
I know, you think about what a time to be alive. I mean, we were born in 87, so we came up post all of that, and we saw, we came to these stories later and we saw the stories that were influenced by it. But yeah, I mean, I have to imagine to be living through this, right? I don't
know when V for Vendetta came out, throw that in there too. I'm like, what a time to be alive. Totally. Yeah.
Yeah. Jan says, what I love about Year One is how Batman is portrayed as this compassionate hero in a bleak and cynical world.
Yes.
Scenes like him saving the cat from being shot, trying to protect Holly from the violent pimp, showing mercy to his enemies, and saving the baby at the end are even more powerful given how gritty and awful Gotham is. This book really captures how Batman appearing is a sea change moment in the history of Gotham City. Yeah,
I mean, we haven't talked much about Catwoman because, I mean, she's there, but she's not really a major player. But he clearly influences her A to B. I mean, he saves a cat, which I love that. I support that, and won Catwoman over with that. And then she dresses up like a cat, and it's their little meeting there on the roof is just, it's so classic because he's like, thanks for wasting my time, because she messes up his entire thing that day.
Yep.
I love that kind of interaction between them. But you can already see, like, and that's, everybody talks about it now. It's like the fall of the mob and the rise of the freaks. Like that's here just very subtly, but it's here with Catwoman. It's here with the Joker tease at the end. And no, I think also, like, it's interesting. He's like, oh, let me help this 13-year-old girl or whatever. And then she stabs him in the leg. And so he's got to learn, like, you can't, even he who's like the enemy and all this, like, even he can be taken by surprise by these sorts of things. And he's learning, and it is so important that he does fail, like you said before. So absolutely.
Yeah. The failure and the need to instill fear and how he figures that out, and that he can't do it alone. I mean, I keep quoting, maybe that should be the sign off to this podcast. I keep quoting that Grant Morrison line, the first truth of Batman, the saving grace. I was never alone. And you see right from the jump in this Year One story. I mean, Alfred, of course, but then, the need for Dent, the need for Gordon. So, but yeah, I know as far as the Catwoman, I know, we, like you said, we don't get a ton, but, interesting, obviously, to see this spin as a sex worker. And then she embarks on her new path and all of that.
And this is the first time she's a woman of color, I think. I mean, again, not a comic book historian. Maybe I'm wrong, but this is the first time I encountered it. So yeah,
comic book wise, I mean, I would go back to the Adam West TV series, but
got me there. Eartha Kitt. Yes, thank you.
I've never even watched it, but no, actually, I've seen a few. I've seen some episodes.
And they changed that for the Long Halloween, by the way. So I don't know what quite the continuity is, but anyway.
But to Jan's,
see, that's what makes it feel like it's like a pilot for a show they never continue, because it's like, oh, you're planting these seeds for Catwoman, and then it's like, well, what do you like? And again, it's not, and that's the criticism of like, does everything have to lead to something else? That's not what I'm saying. It just feels like I love this setup. I would like to see more of it. Thank you, Tim Sale and Jeff Lowe, for picking it up 10 years later.
Well, okay. So now that's an important point. And I think this leads to where we're going in a little bit with Year Two, where whether it was still Miller and Mazzucchelli or different creative teams, it's like this, like this feels like it's existing in more of a vacuum than it should.
Yes.
Right. Especially if now this is setting the course. And it's also the sort of thing as a lifelong DC fan. Like, every time they do one of these quote unquote reboots, I mean, namely with Crisis and then the New 52, they never commit 100% and just start over from scratch. There's always, 5 years, like with the New 52 in particular, 5 years have passed. Like, okay, so what happened in those 5 years? Yep. And then, the Batman books and the Green Lantern books, well, they're doing well. Let's just let them continue along. So those were uninterrupted.
Yeah. How many Robins in 5 years? Yeah.
So it's a tough thing, right? Whereas, I don't know, if they were fully starting from scratch and you let off with this and then all of the creative teams to follow were kind of working in that same mode.
Well, that's why I love the Matt Wagner stuff, right? Dark Moon Rising, because that's like, I know what we should do. Let's retell the stories from the 30s, but with a modern sensibility. I'm like, why are we not doing that? That is exactly what I want. I mean, I guess Legends of the Dark Knight was sort of that, I guess, but it still wasn't quite the same idea. Like that wasn't quite the same idea of what we're talking about here. And then, I don't know where I'd put those on my shelf exactly. I don't know about you, right? But like, you put them in continuity on your shelf, and I'm like, I don't know, where does this go? Does it go before Man Who Laughs or in year 2 and that sort of thing? I love Dark Moon Rising, and that kind of scratches that itch we're having for that, in my opinion.
Yeah, I'll be getting to those at some point, so we'll stay tuned. All right, David says, I loved year 1 as a teenager, but revisiting it in my 30s left me a little cold. It's very edgy in a way that was only impressive to teenage me. So if it weren't for the art, I wouldn't have a whole lot to love about it. I think it's excellently conceptualized and the story is fantastic, but Miller's injection of pure testosterone into every character keeps me at arm's length. It still holds a very, all caps, fond place in my heart, but it's far from my favorite Batman story as it used to be. I still think it is a vast wellspring to draw from tonally, and I'm always delighted when adaptations borrow from it. So there's someone less keen on it.
No, I mean, definitely I respect that opinion, and I think it's the people who were like trying to make a hot take where it's like, dude, you know what, year 1 sucks, and let me tell you why. I'm like, okay. But no, I definitely, like, some stuff didn't hit well for him, but obviously it was his favorite for a while, so it had some hold over him. So I think that's totally fair.
Yeah, but I think, because we've spent a lot of time talking about Byrne's Man of Steel, and it's like that was jumping around so much. Like I look at that as more of a template for the stories that were to follow, and just setting up the pieces of this new origin rather than and others will disagree, that's fine, but rather than a truly cohesive singular narrative. Whereas I look at year 1 and I really do feel like I had a satisfying meal reading that from start to finish in a way that I don't necessarily with that other post-crisis origin revamp.
Totally agree.
Jason says, in the afterword of the hardcover, Mazzucchelli ponders if they went too realistic with their depiction of Batman. He questions if making it so realistic made for things like Batmite harder to swallow, but also harder to actually make Batman believable, because you begin to question so much about a character that wasn't necessarily built for it originally. All I can say is that it's probably my favorite work of Miller's, and it is one of the most beautiful books in the medium.
Absolutely.
Interesting point about making it too realistic and then kind of opening it up to those questions. I don't know.
I mean, did he say that before or after the Chris Nolan trilogy? You know, I mean, that might apply to those movies maybe, but I think here there's still that comet book fantastic
bat through the window. Bat through the window.
There, we need that.
I think right. You do. Yes. Yeah. And then last but not least, Jared says, year 1 was the second Batman comic I ever read, the second comic in general after The Dark Knight Returns. I've read it who knows how many times. I can probably recite it if prompted. While I'm sure there's some degree of nostalgia involved, I still think it stands up well, and it's one of the best superhero origin stories. It feels like a distilled version of the Golden Age stories of Batman, filtered through a 70s, 80s crime film like Serpico, while still keeping Batman's heroic nature intact. A real feat. All right on.
Absolutely.
Okay. Then we have this 2011 animated movie, which clearly we were very excited to see at San Diego Comic-Con and to watch the panel.
Yep.
And it's just one of those things where I don't know how much there is to say about it, because it is exceedingly I guess my question is it faithful to a fault? Because for anyone who hasn't seen it, any changes it makes are nominal. I mean, we talked about that moment at the end where I think they give you a little bit more of a wink about whether Gordon knows. I swear, the only other thing that really jumped out at me was the scene where Gordon goes to question Bruce, and Bruce is putting on he's doing his whole drunk playboy shtick.
Yes.
And there's the woman next to him who doesn't speak English, allegedly.
Yeah.
In the comic, that's it with the woman. But in the movie, they add this tag where the woman does speak English, and she reveals she's been paid, through the discussion, you find out she's been paid $5,000 to just kind of go along with this.
Can I leave now? I love that. I love that. Like, please, can we have done more of that, please?
Yeah,
right. I can see it straight out of Batman Begins. I can see that happening in that same situation.
It's true. Although it's this, I was thinking about this. In BVS where there's that moment Bruce wakes up and he's got these two women in his bed.
Yeah.
Now I'm always of the opinion it's like, yes, this is this Playboy facade and all of that, but he's also a man. I feel like he would indulge from time to time, but overall, yes, to your point, like that little extension of that scene. So this is my question. It's like, was this animated movie faithful to a fault in really just translating it and not adapting it and fleshing it out?
As comic book fans, people are always like, oh, I can't wait till they adapt Nightfall or whatever, right? And there's always this debate of like being faithful to the source material or not. And I've heard people say like, the only thing that some people will be satisfied with is if you hold up a comic book in front of a camera and turn the page. And that's exactly what this movie is. I was shocked that it was so like, yep, well, that sure was Batman Year One. That's what it was. I liked it because I like Batman Year One, but what does it add? I mean, look, Bryan Cranston inspired casting. I would still love to see him as Gordon at some point. He's the right age where he could be 10, 20 years from now. He could still play Gordon in the right case. I think that's inspired casting. So he added a lot to it. I did want to ask you about your boy Ben McKenzie, though. I know you're a big OC defender. Look, I go to the church of Kevin Conroy when it comes to voicing Batman. I'm not saying everyone needs to be him. I'm just saying Ben maybe didn't bring enough to it to like individualize it, because there have been certain other performers. I want to say, it was a deep cut, but Jeremy Sisto, he's in Justice League New Frontier. Like, he brought something to it, for example. Dietrich Bader, obviously,
Yep.
Batman Brave and the Bold. He's fine. He's fine as Batman, but I'm like, I don't know. He's acting. Like, don't get me, he doesn't show up and is not Ben McKenzie off the street or whatever from the OC, but he's just like, like even that, like, I'm like, that could have brought something to it, but I like the way Bryan Cranston brings something to Gordon. I didn't think Ben McKenzie brought something to Batman. So
I honestly, I can't fight you on that. That's the thing with this, where I still think it's questionable to just translate it as literally as they did. Mm-hmm. And it's a tough thing. I get that they want to be reverential to the material, and this is such a beloved seminal work. And yeah, it's like, to your point, it's like you and I have talked about a lot of adaptations over the years, individually and together at times. And I feel like there have been countless times where our criticism has been some version of like, they should have been more faithful to the book. So it's like, okay, here's something that's 100% faithful to the book.
Superman Doomsday, perhaps I treated you too harshly.
So it's a tough, but I don't know. But on the other hand, part of me is like glad that this exists, because maybe this is a reminder of not to demand or expect too much fidelity to the source material, because when you get it, it's the sort of thing where that book is a brisk read. It's 4 issues. The scenes move along. It's like, I'd be hard pressed to tell someone to watch the movie in lieu of the book. I mean, doing both is great, but it's like, if someone was new to this story, it's like, of course, like, read the book.
Yeah, I mean, we're just asking for a little bit expansion on the fringes, maybe a little more character moments. Like, I think that scene at the end with Bruce and Alfred and the woman they hired, perfect example. I'm like, oh yeah, inject some personality into it. Maybe then Ben McKenzie has more stuff to play with and can settle into the role and inject some personality. I'm gonna invoke Batman the Killing Joke here, which is not what you do, because I remember. Me and, again, I'll mention Lance Laster, a couple of other friends, we went to go see Batman the Killing Joke, because when these come out, like, sometimes these come out and then they do have one night only Fathom events. I'm like, oh, let's try and go see it. We went with some friends, and, they added this Batgirl prologue. It's like 15 minutes. And about 10 minutes in, one of our buddies leans over. He's like, hey, this is the Killing Joke, right? Because it's like, I thought, oh, they're going to expand the story. No, they added some weird 15-minute prologue. and the contents of that, I'm not going to go into, but did not serve the story well, was not great, did not love it, very questionable choices. Don't do that to Batman Year One either. I'm not saying that. I'm just like, give us more with the Roland, give us more with Catwoman, give us more with the, like, there's more to be, there's so much, like you said, there's gaps here, right? There's so much room to expand, and I guess they thought they couldn't. I don't know.
Yeah, it's fun. We'll get to the Killing Joke, the comic and the animated adaptation. I saw that animated adaptation also at San Diego Comic-Con at its premiere in 2016, and there was a very contentious moment between a person asking a question and Brian Azzarello, who wrote that prologue, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, it was a whole thing. But
okay.
But you know, it's funny. I disliked the execution, but I liked the idea that the Killing Joke itself we're not going to touch. But we need to flesh this out. Although, did you need to? I don't know.
Yeah.
But it's like, okay, so we're going to add this prologue. So that is another approach. Like, if you really, really want to be utterly faithful to the comic, but you need to round it out a little bit more. You add a prologue, you add an epilogue. Okay, that you could do that. Here, though, building off of what you were saying, yeah, I wouldn't have like totally reworked the story or anything like that. But like we're saying, those scenes, they're so short.
Yes.
And it's fine, especially in the comic book form. But I think just extend those scenes with Gordon and Essen talking at the diner, for example. Or, you know, I think that's all I really would have wanted here. So not a fundamental overhaul of anything, but just flesh out those moments. I think that would have gone a long way.
You could do more, I don't know, flashbacks with Bruce, maybe training. I don't know. Like, that's so generic, I guess. I'm just thinking like obvious things to pad out. But they didn't. They were slavish to the source material to its detriment. Because people ask me, well, do you like the movie? I'm like, well, I mean, I like Batman Year One, so yeah. But like, I don't think this, I'll say it again, other than Bryan Cranston, I don't think they really added anything, which led me to something else I'm going to ask you. I love Katie Sackhoff, big fan of Battlestar Galactica, all her work as well. Bo-Katan on The Mandalorian and Clone Wars and all that stuff. Why is she in this as Sarah Essen? She has like 12 lines of dialogue. I was kind of shocked because that's another thing. Like, oh, they cast Katie Sackhoff, nerd royalty, in this role. Surely they'll expand her role. No, she shows up about 50 minutes in and she's out at about 65 minutes in. I'm like, wow, thank you for your time, Katie Sackhoff.
Yeah, and Eliza Dushku as Catwoman.
Yes, another one. Exactly. Like, I don't.
Yeah.
You bring these great actresses, bringing her in for these characters, expand their roles. So Catwoman's another obvious expansion you can make.
Yeah, I really think just, building out those scenes a little bit more would have helped a lot. And yeah, with the voice cast, I generally, I'm a fan of the OC. And then again, I mean, Ben McKenzie would go on to play Gordon on Gotham. Yeah, I felt like there was just a flatness. Generally, though, I mean, I did enjoy Cranston but overall, and I don't know if it's, like, I know back in the day with Batman the Animated Series, like, they would all be together in the recording studio and going back and forth. I don't know. I know over the years that kind of fell away, and then everybody just kind of does their own thing individually. I don't know what the approach was when they recorded it, but I feel like generally there was a bit of just kind of a flat quality to it. And I also feel like music could have helped a lot. Because and there is music, but, and I'm not to disparage the composer here, but it didn't stand out. And not that I would have wanted them to literally use the Hans Zimmer score from The Dark Knight, but like, imagine this movie with music like that's like really pumping you up.
I had the same thought specifically when Bruce saves the baby. I'm like, imagine, the climax of The Dark Knight where Batman saves Jim Gordon, same character actually, Jim Jr., right? He saves the baby or the child from Two-Face. Like, dun, 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 dun. I'm like, that adds so much. If you ever doubted if music could be part of, we'll talk about that when we get to the other movie, music being part of the experience, like, it's just, and no offense to the composer, it was kind of like just wallpaper. It just didn't really do anything. So that would have definitely injected some life into it. Now, I do think like when Gordon's doing his narration, totally works when he's by himself. Because, I mean, he's not with anyone, right?
Right.
All the bouncing off each other and that sort of thing. Absolutely. There's an intangible energy there that I think that led to some of the magic of Batman, the Animated Series, the way they recorded it.
Yeah, I think if you're going to be this faithful, and debatable whether you need to be, but if you are, well then, other than just seeing it animated, what is this adding? And that's where I think really lively performances or just, really moving, evocative score, use the other tools at your disposal. The sound, right? Like that you don't have on a comic book page. use these other devices, and I don't feel that they did. David, one of our patrons, said that regarding the movie, I don't think it works too well as a movie because Year One is more so 4 issues in an ongoing saga than it is a complete beginning, middle, end type of adventure, in my opinion. To put it another way, the 2-part Dark Knight Returns adaptation is much more satisfying structurally.
Totally agree with that. I think it was genius to split that, especially coming in the wake of, again, the overly harshly judged by us at the time, Superman Doomsday. You can hear us talk about it for Kryptonite, actually. But Dark Knight Returns, I think, is my favorite of this era of the DC direct-to-video movies they were doing. Peter Weller's a great Batman voice. I mean, that old grizzly Batman, perfect for that. So I mean, he brought something to it. So I'm saying, come on, Ben, be more like Peter. No, that's a hard comparison to make, but absolutely, like whatever the shortcomings were here, they unlocked with Dark Knight Returns. Maybe because that story it works better as an arc, and this doesn't, like we were saying, like the climax is. Like, we love it, but it doesn't quite fit, like, the theatrical 3-act structure and that sort of thing, and maybe that's to his detriment. So, some works are not to be adapted, and maybe Batman Year One is one of them, Anthony.
Yeah, could be. I am excited to revisit the Dark Knight Returns animated movie, and next month, in honor of the 40-year anniversary of Dark Knight Returns, we'll be looking at the comic and the animated film. Funny enough, though, I mean, this is also the 40th anniversary of Year One. I mean, it started in late 86. I feel like Dark Knight Returns has been getting all of the attention from DC this year. They're doing new editions and things like that, but Year One also. Mm-hmm. Also the 25-year anniversary of Dark Knight Strikes Again, which we're also going to be revisiting. Well, I understand, I guess, why they're not shining too much of a light on that, but hey, still.
I mean, Dark Knight 3 makes Dark Knight Strikes Again look like Dark Knight Returns.
All right. Year Two.
Oh, do we have to?
I mean, I guess we could just cap it here. I've done great work on Year One, and so I guess returning to the question that I posed earlier about Year One, I can probably guess the answer, and it's probably similar to mine. Like, Year Two does not occupy any place of prominence in my Batman fandom. Year Two, I can't remember exactly when I read it, but not unlike yourself, I'm sure when I came across it as a kid, as a preteen or early teen, I probably had that same sense of like, oh, Year Two, right? Like, I love Year One, and now we have a follow up, and pretty much in every way. It's just its own thing, and it's just an instance where I feel like the titling of this, the branding of this as a quote unquote sequel really just did it no favors. And I'm also struck by how close in time this was to Year One. It's the same year that Year One ended, and it's like, I guess I get it to a point, and maybe kudos to DC for trying to try to capitalize and build some momentum. But I also say to myself, yeah, maybe they could have just pumped the brakes a little bit and seeded this over a longer period of time.
Yeah. I mean, even the first issue, you open it up and like, Gordon, he looks like he's gray hair, which they fix later. I get you talking about how the artwork changed or the artist changed. It makes a lot of sense there. But I mean, what is this? Like, what are we doing? Like, I was very disappointed when I found this in high school and read it. I'm like, oh, what, the sequel to Year One? Like, it feels like when they slap an association with Marvel in front of those Venom movies. It's like, what are you trying to fool here? You're trying to attach yourself to something greater than you are. And look, the idea of a Batman Year Two is great. Obviously, we'd all love a sequel to Batman Year One, but this is not it, folks. This is not it. And it's just a bizarre like, oh yeah, the Reaper, the original vigilante of Gotham. Like, that's part of the whole thing of the story. This guy's come back and Batman has to fight him, which is kind of it's a good idea for a story, which we'll talk about shortly. But then, I mean, honestly, the thing that really just blows this whole thing up and throws me off is the Joe Chill of it all. Like, I must use the gun that killed my parents and team up with the man who killed them to take. What are we talking about? Like, that's just a bizarre course for this to take, and I don't know. I didn't care for this. I mean, maybe this has its fans. I don't know, but I've never met anyone who loves Year Two, Anthony.
I mean, I feel like, yeah, look, I feel like no matter what you talk about, there's someone out there who's a staunch defender of it. Yeah. Generally, I feel like with this, you probably wouldn't find too many of them. I think you would also find a ton of people who've simply never read it, despite likely reading Batman Year One, but never came across this or never felt moved to dive in. I feel like if anyone, for anyone who's more casual and might only know one thing of it, it's probably the cover of Batman with the gun. Mm-hmm. Right? Like that imagery. If people know nothing else, it might be that. I don't disagree with you on that. I mean, this was a tough one. So as far as the background of it, I came across this business about a pitch called Batman 1980. So apparently this was a pitch that Mike Barr had put together, I assume in 1980. I mean, I assume this was something that he had done that was floating around. I don't know. But that ultimately then got repurposed into this. My point being that from what I've gathered about the background of this project, it wasn't the case that this was made by design to follow the story and the tone of Year One. I think it was really kind of its own thing that they slapped a Year Two title onto. So like I said, I have the DC Finest collection, and I also have, through the DC app, access to the 30th anniversary hardcover collection where Mike Barr wrote an intro and an afterword. And I feel like the gist of what Barr was conveying, well, he wasn't apologizing for it. I mean, I think he was proud of the work, but I feel like he was making this attempt to explain why it wasn't like Year One. And the way he framed it, it was like, well, we wanted to do something different. And I think for Barr, he was more intrigued by some of the more traditional trappings of the Batman mythology. Not that Robin is in this story, but things like Robin and the giant penny and just other aspects that we weren't dealing with in Year One. So I feel like he was talking a lot about how, like, yeah, they really wanted to make this distinct from Year One. And it's like, well, you did, but I don't know that it did any favors.
Yeah. I will say, and this is something I remember when, back when Chris Nolan, the guy that did Memento and Insomnia, was going to do a Batman movie, right? And they call it Batman, I think, Intimidation Game is what it was called. People were talking about, like, yeah, there's a character called Rachel. We think it might be based off Rachel Caspian from Batman Year 2. And that's probably what made me, honestly, if I'm thinking about it, that's what made me seek this out. And it's so interesting that there's this character called Rachel, and Batman, like, falls in love with her, and they have this whole thing. And it's like the worst romance I've ever read, Anthony. Like, they go on like a date and a half, and he's like although that is very in character for Batman in the movies. I mean, he's ready to hang it up and get with anybody who shows him any attention.
But there's that. But here we have the weird added layer that this woman was about to become a nun, and he lures her away.
It's the power of Bruce Wayne right there. My goodness.
So here's the thing. Clearly, neither of us is sitting here making an impassioned defense for Year Two and arguing that it's been unfairly treated. However, I don't want to punch down. What I will say, I think that there are intriguing themes and ideas here that Mask of the Phantasm is able to explore in a much more sophisticated and satisfying way. And just on the note of Rachel Caspian, so here in Year Two, she's this friend of Leslie Tompkins who Bruce meets. And yes, they start up this romance really, really quickly. And it's the sort of thing that just feels so abrupt. You just don't get the development that you would need to. And had this been a character from his past, a la Rachel Dawes in Batman Begins, maybe you could have gotten away with it a little bit more. Like, oh, there's this built-in history, whether we've seen it or not. But it's like, boom, this is just a new character, and they're off and running. But the idea of a romance and what that might mean for his crime-fighting career, interesting idea. The idea of this returned vigilante who operated in Gotham years ago, who kills the criminals he comes into contact with, and what that means against Batman's brand of justice. Interesting idea, right? Again, I don't think it really gets developed properly. But then, to your point, and this was my biggest frustration reading it.
Yeah.
The whole idea of Batman not using a gun, like, this is something we accept. This is core, especially to the modern incarnation of the character. Now, if you want to do a story that examines that, or not even examines why he doesn't use a gun, but poses the question, what would get him to pick up a gun? Interesting. But here, the dude loses one fight to the Reaper, and he's like, I must use the weapons of my enemy. And then, not only that, it's like, it has to be the gun that killed his parents? Why?
Crazy.
What?
And, like, but even then, like, you know what? Leave it there. But then they have to bring Joe Chill into it too. Like, if you had just stopped at, like, look, he has the gun that killed his parents. Obviously, this guy has endless resources. He's a collector. I kind of understand why he would have this, right? Fine. But then to have him have to work with Joe Chill anyway, that's just, why are we doubling down on that? And look, honestly, I'm not a big fan of the whole Joe Chill being the one who kills his parents, as far as, like, he knows and that sort of thing. Like, I think there's something really powerful to, like, he doesn't know who killed him. So every villain he fights, he projects that villain, and he will never be able to get justice. Now, the Chris Nolan trilogy did its own thing. Like, why were you not able to avenge your parents? That kind of solves that same. Although I did like, I was really taken aback in Batman Begins. Like, we got him, son. I'm like, you tell me Joe Chill was in prison all this whole time? All that to say, there is that he hasn't been able to get vengeance or justice or whatever for his parents, right? Well, there's a difference between vengeance and justice, right? Don't get me wrong. We'll talk about that. But bizarre that they like, and I totally get why DC distanced himself from this. Like, this is really messy. You know, like, let's just not do it, because, like, I don't know, like, I don't mind Batman having guns on, like, the Batmobile and the Batwing, and I know people are really weird about that sometimes, but no, I don't think he should be going around with a just a pistol shooting at people. I don't understand.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, recently we've talked about this because we looked at Hatouche, aka Hush 2, and Batman's use of a gun against Jason Todd in a scene there, and it's like, if you want to cross that line, you want to broach that subject, I'm not saying you can't, but I think there are kind of ways to go about it. And yeah, this just felt like it came out of nowhere. It just not unlike the romance. It just felt too abrupt. I mean, he gets carved up a bit by Reaper, and then all of a sudden, and I agree with you, the fact that he has the gun that killed his parents, I'm okay with. But the fact that, like, that's then what he's going to carry into battle, okay. Yeah. The Joe Chill, I go back and forth. I see both sides. But I mean, as far as the canonicity of this story, it's like when you got to 0 Hour, then DC moved away from Joe Chill, and it went back to just being this, or maybe began being just this, nameless, faceless killer. But then post Infinite Crisis, we were back to it being Joe Chill. So I don't know. We've had a lot of back and forth on that front. And then, like you're saying, the fact that Batman is forced to then work with Joe Chill, because the whole idea is that Batman proposes an alliance with the mobs, the criminals of Gotham, to take down the Reaper. And the crime boss is like, well, we already have our guy, Joe Chill. You'll work with him. Put our
best guy on it.
It's like, yeah, that was a real tough pill to swallow. And then as you build to the end of this, Batman's plan is to kill Joe Chill. And he even reveals his identity to Chill. And I guess it's an open question whether or not he would have moved forward, because the Reaper takes the choice out of his hands and kills Chill.
Much like in Batman Begins. I think there are moments, lines, characters, like they obviously, Goyer and Nolan, I think they read this and they took some things from it. And because that, like, he's robbed of the vengeance. And I like that idea of, like, would he have, because we've all, not to that extreme, but, like, you think, like, you know what, when I get my hands on so-and-so, I'm going to do this. But then you're presented with it, you're like, I can't do it, right? That's a classic hero thing.
Yeah.
I say we all, but I'm like stories and things like that. Yeah. Yeah, but then, like, I don't know, how we got there, so convoluted. I think in isolation, all of these ideas are interesting. Like you said, like, examine these things. Very interesting. But, like, you throw them all in this gumbo of nonsense. They don't mesh well together. And how old is the Reaper? Fighting the 75-year-old man?
Well, so I guess a couple of things on the Reaper front. So in that climactic final moment where Reaper intervenes and kills Chill, and then Batman and Reaper battle, and then Reaper's holding on, but then he lets go and he falls to his death. But he has this line, obviously I'm paraphrasing, but, like, basically, I know that you, Batman, are willing to do what it takes. So, like, Reaper's take seems to be that Batman would have killed Chill, which that's, I guess, Reaper's impression, but it's like, I don't know, like, what is your read on what Batman would have done if Reaper hadn't intervened? Because this, like, we get Reaper's take on that, but I don't know that we really get the story's take on that. And I don't know if that's a failing of the story or not, or if it's good that it just leaves it open to our interpretation. Yeah. Curious your thoughts on that.
Well, that whole thing, it's like Ra's al Ghul is like, have you finally learned to do what is necessary, right? It's the same energy there. No, obviously they would not have Batman kill Joe Chill. I mean, even in, let's talk about this. Batman 89, the Joker killed, Jack Napier killed the Waynes. I saw that as a child and I was like, oh, okay, that's what the movie's doing. And it wasn't sacrilege to me. I'm sure if they did that today, it'd be a whole thing, right? But even then, he doesn't just straight up execute the Joker. Like, he's trying to escape. He tries to stop him. He doesn't mind that he died, right?
Right.
I won't kill you, but I don't have to save you, right? It's the same attitude. So I think that is that's where Batman goes. That's as far as he goes. Like him just straight up murdering Joe Chill. As out of character as Batman was in a lot of this, that would have been a step beyond for me. I don't think they would have done it. I think he would have like come to his senses at the last second before he pulled the trigger or something like that.
I agree. But I agree with that. But then I feel like, I don't know, to kind of close out Bruce's character arc in this, I think it would have been important for him to have made the choice not to kill before Reaper intervenes. Or to articulate afterwards, like I couldn't have gone through with it.
He should have had a scene with Alfred, like Alfred, I had him in my sights and I was ready to do it, but then I said no, my parents wouldn't want this, or something like that.
So
the lack of clarity concerns you as far as Batman's motivation.
A little bit. Oh, and then the other thing with Caspian, the father, it's like they could have made this into a bit of a mystery as to who Reaper is, but nope. Like they tell you right off the bat.
This is Jeff Loeb is nowhere to be seen in year 2.
So clearly this left a lot to be desired. I would be really curious if there are any defenders of year 2. Please write in and let us know. We did get one comment from Jared, one of our patrons, so I'll read that, and then we'll segue into the better version of year 2, aka Mask of the Phantasm. But Jared says, it makes sense why there's more talk about year 1 than year 2, but it's also a bit of a shame because while it's a very different beast, one that embraces the campier and melodramatic side of comics, it's still pretty good in its own right. Well, so here we have a little bit of a defender.
Okay.
Jared continues, the Reaper is a fun challenge for Batman, and his dynamics with Leslie Tompkins and Rachel Caspian are intriguing, even if the love aspect feels like it comes out of nowhere. Mm-hmm. Mike W. Barr and Alan Davis are an underrated Batman team, with their Detective Comics run after Crisis being a rediscovered classic for me, as well as their Batman and the Outsider series. It's just a shame that Davis didn't get to finish the whole story, even if seeing early Todd McFarlane art is still interesting. Spawn probably wouldn't exist if it weren't for this story, giving Todd ample time to draw the most flowing and elaborate capes. So that's a positive take on year 2.
I did like Leslie Tompkins in this. I like how she was like, you stay away from her, Bruce. Like, that's a nice little character wrinkle there, and an underused character, but not on Gotham, right, Anthony? She's a main character on the Gotham TV show. That's a character I'm shocked that, obviously, other than Gotham, really, she's not in live action anywhere. But love to see more of her. Look, if this was not Batman Year 2, if there's just some weird, like, hey, remember that weird run on Detective where he fought that old vigilante? Like, that was weird, huh? Yeah, like, if it's just the Reaper, I think we'd have that opinion. I think it's the Reaper with the gun, with the Joe Chill, it just really pushes it over to, like, this is messy. This is, like, first draft idea, and we gotta the story is wearing too many hats, as they say.
Yeah. I know, it's a funny thing. If it weren't called year 2, it
Batman,
probably,
fear the Reaper. That's all.
Yeah. And it probably would have just skated by, and we probably wouldn't be talking about it at all now, or if and when people did come to it, I'm sure the same objections would remain, but all of it is heightened by its branding here. So, but like going back to where we started with the collection, the fact that now it's been packaged together and this finest edition is being given this like official recognition in this way. It's just intriguing.
They're re-recognizing that after all this time for whatever reason. So.
All right. So Mask of the Phantasm. I have one last patron comment here that ends on a question that tees us up for this. So Brian Dempsey says, I remember Mask of the Phantasm came out on Christmas Day, 1993. No one talks about the fact it was a box office bomb. Grumpy Old Men and Tombstone both came out on the same day. I saw it with my younger brother. We only knew it was out because of the movie listings in the newspaper, and we didn't want to watch Grumpy Old Men. The theater was busy, and we thought we'd have trouble finding seats. But we watched Mask of the Phantasm with only 4 other people. We were both blown away by the story and the way Gotham looked on the big screen, and that vocal chorus of the animated series theme. Man, what a good score. How did you first experience Mask of the Phantasm? Did it have a reputation preceding it, or did you get to form your own unbiased opinion?
Well, I remember distinctly, we didn't see it in the theater. I don't think we probably didn't know it was in the theater. I would have gone and my parents would have taken me because they were good at that sort of thing. And I loved Batman the Animated Series. We were the perfect age when this show came out. We were the target audience, you and me, Anthony. And I used to came home after school every day, watch Batman the Animated Series as part of my childhood, right? And then I don't know how we discovered this movie. I mean, I remember we were at Blockbuster and Blockbuster Video, and it was a new release, so it wasn't the blue box, it was the red box. You had to return that within 3 days. It wasn't a week, something like that. And I watched this, and this was incredible. Like, I probably watched it 3 times over the 3 days we had it. Totally blew me away, and lives up to the hype. And it was one of the first, when I started buying DVDs. I got a PlayStation 2 in high school. One of the first DVDs I got. I was like, wow, this still lives up to the hype. It has Batman the Animated Series is the gold standard for Batman for me and for a lot of people. The DCAU as well. And this is the gold standard for that. Like, this is the crown jewel in the crown that is DC Animated Universe. And to me, this is the best Batman movie. It's not the best live action Batman movie because it's not live action, but it's the best Batman movie. It is incredible. The origin, I guess I'm really proud of him for inventing a villain. I mean, we will never see this again. An original villain invented for a Batman movie, animated or live action. And then how the Joker just kind of weaves in at the end. Like, you don't even realize he's part of it until the end, and it all falls together so well, and the past and the future and the emotional stakes. Like, even as a 7-year-old or whatever, I'm like, this is incredible, And then as you get older, you appreciate it even more and more. And I don't know, like, I just think this is so interesting because, like, obviously they made the Batman Year One movie based off Batman Year One, and they made Batman Mask of the Phantasm. I'm gonna say, like, I think they, like, Paul Dini and Bruce Timm and all them, like, they say it's not from Year Two. It is totally from Year Two. And I have one other curveball for you, and I'll let you get into it because you're nodding in approval here. I'm a big fan of the 1990s Flash show, right?
Yes.
There is an episode called, I pulled it up here, called Shroud of Death, and it aired on November 29th, 1990. It is pretty much the same story as well. And I don't want to say, and I love Bruce Timm and Paul Dini, but, like, you guys also stole Harley Quinn from that show, because the Trickster is the Joker, and the Trickster has a sidekick called Prank, and you will not tell me you guys did not see this, because I know you got Mark Hamill, I know you got Shirley Walker. There's so much DNA from the Flash TV show and Batman Animated Series. It's totally fine. Maybe you can't say this for legal reasons or what, but you took these things from the Flash and Batman Year Two. Roundabout way of saying it's almost like they shouldn't remake good things. They should remake bad things, because when they remade Batman Year One into a movie, I'm like, when they remade, so to speak, Batman Year Two into a movie, absolute greatness. So there we go. There's my there's my thoughts on Batman Mask of the Phantasm in a nutshell.
No, man, I've been nodding along. So it's funny. I came to it a little differently. I have to confess. I don't know how or why. I hate to even say this. I never watched this until the past few years. Now, I watched Batman the Animated Series all the way through. I watched it regularly as a kid. When the DVDs came out, I rewatched the whole series. I feel like I have a memory of seeing Mask of the Phantasm and the Sub-Zero movie as well at Blockbuster.
Okay.
Why? I don't know. Unless I did it, I'm totally blanking, but I don't think so. So for whatever reason, these escaped my sight. I have no excuse. So then a few years ago, I watched it, I think on streaming. And I have to admit, I kind of came away from it being like, oh, okay. Like, I don't.
Oh my goodness.
I don't really get all the hype. Okay, but it's all right. It has a happy ending. But this was another one of the reasons why I wanted to tackle these stories as a quartet here, the two comic book stories and the two movies, because I wanted to revisit it. And when the 4K edition came out, I bought it because I knew I needed to spend more time with this movie. So I wanted to give it another shot. I enjoyed it so much this second time. So everybody can rest easy.
There's hope for you yet, Anthony.
Yeah, no, I really enjoyed it. Look, I might have been in a funky mood when I watched it the first time. I mean, I don't know. Or going back to what we were saying with Dark Knight Returns in Year One, it might be that I had heard from people like you over all these years it's the best Batman movie. And I was like, oh, okay. Maybe it was that. I don't know. I enjoyed it so much more now. And I do think in large part it was watching it right after reading or rereading Year Two and seeing, oh, okay. So this idea of a lethal vigilante operating in Gotham, that idea can work when fleshed out a bit more. The idea of a romance between Bruce and a woman, and one that calls into question whether he can really continue down this path he's on. Really, really interesting. And I thought here, unlike in Year Two, where they just give away the identity of the villain from the jump, here it was a really intriguing mystery, and I thought a satisfying payoff. And I guess before we go further, I know this is probably a weird thing to say given that the movie is 33 years old, but if anyone somehow doesn't know who Phantasm is, we will be spoiling it. So be warned. And kind of on that note, you've had your spoiler warning. Yeah. So Andrea Beaumont, I mean, a wonderful addition as a love interest, as a new villain. I know I've seen you post about this, and I share your disbelief that she has had almost no existence outside of these specific DCAU projects. Like this movie, of course, a cameo in the epilogue episode of Justice League Unlimited, tie-in comics as well, right? But I guess she made her official in-universe debut in the Tom King Batman Catwoman maxi series, which I have not read yet.
Our friend Tom King. I did read it.
Good old Tom King.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, he put her in there. Yep. I'll leave.
Okay. All right. So yeah, it's wild that she hasn't had a larger life beyond this, but I so enjoyed it. I mean, a few random thoughts. First of all, it is funny to me. They never actually named the villain the Phantasm. Like that name is never uttered.
Oh yeah.
In the movie, but
Looks
that's
more
how
like
we
the
know the
Ghost
character.
of Christmas Future. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. A cool design. Do you like the look of this villain?
Yeah, they clearly saw the Reaper and redesigned it into the Phantasm. Yeah, I mean, it could just the thought process and all that aside, it seems like you might have some knowledge you might share. I don't know. Do you know? Have you read anything about that? I'm just curious. Like,
I came across. I don't have it pulled up, but I did come across some interviews and stuff like that. So yeah, to your point, I think Tim and Dini and company have said that they weren't directly basing it on year two. Unless I'm mistaken, and apologies if I am, but I think there was a Mike Barr quote that I came across where he was like, I don't know what offices he was visiting, but he saw someone working on year two or working on Mask of the Phantasm, and they had the year two comic like right there. So look, it's one of those things. The villain alone, in terms of the look and the MO, it's like to the naked eye, how is that not a pull?
Executing criminals? Yeah, I mean, it's in the hands and the hook.
Yeah,
hands,
the sides.
Yeah, the sides. Yes, thank you. That's the word
exactly.
I was searching for. Yeah.
Yeah.
The father-daughter connection. I mean, you think that's the brilliance of it, right? Because you think Stacy Keach, by the way, one of my favorite actors and voice actors, incredible voice. He's not in the movie very much, obviously. Spoilers, right? But great choice for that, right? And this is the only, like, let's talk about this, right? This would only work in animation. You cannot, if you try to pull this, like, oh, it's not her, like, dad who's like a big, beefy guy and like an imposing figure, and it's just her. I'm like, I don't know if that's gonna. It's like the Scream movies where it's like, well, you really Ghostface, you wouldn't fill out that costume that way. So that's what you'd experience, right? But it works, right? And no, I do think all the did they or didn't they year two stuff aside, again, kudos to them for inventing a villain for their first big picture like that. That makes a statement. Yes, they use the Joker, but he is an auxiliary character. If the Joker wasn't in this, I don't know, he's pretty great in it. I'm not going to say it would be just as good, but you could have told this story without him, right? And also, they kind of weave it, because it was always like adjacent to the Tim Burton movies. It's like, oh yeah, we're going to take that gangster origin for the Joker, and we're going to like improve it. Like everything going on in live action and Batman movies at the time, they took and they improved. And it was just, I don't know, it was a revelation. I think it was so smart, and it pays off a lot of stuff from the show. But if you didn't see the show and you see it in isolation, it still works 100%, I think.
Yeah, agreed, man. It was so satisfying, and Andrea, voiced by Dana Delaney, who would of course go on to voice Lois Lane. I agree about the use of the Joker and the fact that you see him in those flashbacks pre-Jokerization. You see him as this underling. So that aspect of it was fascinating. And I guess what I enjoyed most about this was the love story and the impact that it had. And I felt like there was a very delicate line to walk. And so we do jump back and forth in time here. There are, I guess, maybe like 3 major flashback pieces to this, because you have Andrea Beaumont return to Gotham in the present, but then we flash back to the doomed romance that she had with Bruce years earlier as he was about to embark upon this crusade. By the way, I do think that timing works better than in year 2, where it's like he's already Batman, he's already in year 2, and then he meets this woman. the fact that here it's like as he's still putting the pieces together, and is this going to set him on a different path? And the reason why I say they walk a really delicate line is that, well, number one, we're taking a very sacred origin story here, the making of Batman, and we're inserting this new piece into it. So that could be a little dicey. But hand in hand with that, it's like you have to make it, like you can't make it seem or read that like his quest is so easily put aside. Yes. And I feel like that would do a major disservice to Batman and to the story that we're telling. So I think they did a great job in those scenes with Bruce at the cemetery.
Yes,
he's talking to his parents.
Yes.
And that moment in particular where he's like, it doesn't hurt the same way that it used to, something to that effect.
Yeah. I
thought was a great way of encapsulating it. It's like, yeah, there is this pain he has lived with every moment since his parents were killed. And that's such a fire within him. But now he meets somebody, and it's not this sort of flip thing, but it's just like, well, now doesn't hurt as much. Mm-hmm. And maybe that changes the equation. So, and obviously the
things
Kevin
are
Conroy
different
vocal.
now. I need you to understand. He's pleading with this grave. It's pathetic at the same time. It's like, but it's emotional, and you just, oh my God. Like you talked about you want to see the bat fly in the window. Yeah. I want to see in live action. Shocking. We've never seen Bruce Wayne properly visit his parents' grave other than the dream sequence in BVS. Yes, I know. But like, I want to see Bruce Wayne at the cemetery, like pleading with his parents, or even beyond that, just Batman, like the image of like the Batman cowl creeping up over the Wayne name and all that. That's so iconic. And like that's formative stuff. And they have this shared they connect over the having, they have dead parents. Like her mom is dead and his parents are dead, and they're in the graveyard, and she's talking to him. I don't know, did Alan Miles watch this before they wrote the Smallville? Speaking of people being inspired,
right? This
is how Clark and Lana have their meet cute in the Smallville pilot, right? Talking at the graveyard, like, hey, who you talking to over there?
There's your blueprint.
Yeah, that's that's it. But in the fact that Dana Delaney and Kevin Conroy had this great chemistry, even so when she became Lois Lane in the DCAU, they even pair Batman and Lois Lane together. I think based off the strength of this, and what a great love interest. Like she's his equal, and the whole "I didn't count on being happy" is such a powerful statement. And then also just the overall themes of it, like. I love theme parks, and I love like Tomorrowland energy. Like they go to this, Epcot Center world of the future, right, and all this like bright thing, right, and then that's them on their early romance, the honeymoon phase, and like the future's so bright, and then just thematically, like you go to the present, and it's this broken down theme park, and it's like nobody's life turned out the way you thought it'd be. The Joker's living there because of course he would, because that's the broken down theme park stuff that he lives in, like, and it's so symbolic of like what was and what is now. And I'm like, that's so rich. That's so thematic and powerful.
And then it literally goes up in flames.
Yes.
It's like this future that they could have had together. No, yeah, man. It was, like I said, I mean, I enjoyed it so much. And we talk about the vocal performances. Kevin Conroy, I mean, he really, I feel like got a lot to sink his teeth into in this. And and I love in terms of the design and the vocal performance that you get to see the younger Bruce
he
as well.
Sounds younger. He does something with his voice where he sounds 10 years younger. Absolutely.
Yeah. And because that's another sort of fine line, because it's not, I mean, especially as a non-artist, it's like, how do they, because it's not like, teenage Bruce or something like that. Yeah. It's like, no, we're going back to year one Bruce, but visually and sonically, it's like, yeah, there is a clear delineation between between the present day Bruce and the younger one.
Well, you talk about you talk about this, sorry, they're talking over there, but you talk about the like destiny nature, right, of the bat breaking through the window. There's something about like, and he proposes to Andrea, and then she's like, oh, of course I'll marry you, right? And all the bats erupt from the cave. I'm like, okay, that is, like, again, I don't want Superman to have a destiny as the chosen one. I don't want Batman to have to be a destiny to be Batman, but there's something just thematic and epic about that. So I am coming around to, you're like, oh no, I want to see that bat break through the window. That's the equivalent, I think, in this movie of that happening, right?
Yeah, no, that's a great call. I really like that. And, going back to the mystery of it. Yeah, here, I feel like, and certainly by this I mean, I feel like even by my first watch, I'm sure I had seen it spoiled at some point.
I didn't have the toy at the time, but apparently the toy spoiled it. Like,
right,
there's a sticker, and they're like, you take the sticker off, like, oh, I guess it's her.
But it's like, assuming you can kind of go in cold to this, I do think it is a satisfying payoff, because yes, certainly Andrea's father, right? He seems like a contender until you find out that no, he was killed, right? But I feel like the other contender is Arthur Reeves, the city councilman.
Yes.
Who used to work for Beaumont. Was it Carl Beaumont? Or I forget what his name
Carl,
is.
That sounds right. Carl Beaumont, yeah.
But who was laundering money for these Gotham criminals.
I forget the actor's name, but he was the male love interest in Supergirl.
Hart Bachner.
There it is.
Oh, yeah.
He was really good at this.
He was good. Yeah, Ethan, the hunky gardener from the Supergirl movie.
The scene where Batman comes after he's like, again, every scene in this movie is so great. Like when Joker shows up, the councilman and his wacky pal, like that's hilarious, right? But he gets him with the Joker venom, and of course it's the animated series. So even in the movie, they're like, oh, he'll be fine, sure. But Batman shows up and he's like, ha, 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 oh no, like that's hilarious. And like I don't know, like it was like they could have, I don't know, this character didn't exist on the show, but they invented him and they tied him to the backstory, and it worked so well. And again, the like you're saying, the voice cast, Mark Hamill, like again, he's the definitive Joker, right? Much like Kevin Conroy, he's the definitive Batman. Him switching gears so quickly, it's like, don't touch me, old man. I don't know where you've been. Like it's just like this, and that's why his Joker is so perfect, because he's crazy, but he's also funny and goofy, and he's self-aware, and I don't know. And then get like Abe Vigoda from The Godfather, right?
Yeah, absolutely, and. Like we're saying with the, not to harp on the romance piece of it, but I guess that stands out so much because that's not something that, certainly like in the animated series, it's, it's not like, I feel like we were delving into that, certainly to this extent.
Yeah.
And like you were saying, the fact that it really plays the dynamic between the two of them. I mean, that meeting in the cemetery in the flashbacks, and then later in the flashbacks when she shows up at Wayne Manor and they have their little martial arts quote unquote battle.
Jiu-jitsu is no joke.
Yeah. But it's like, you see, she can kind of hold her own in that respect. They also have the shared trauma, like you were saying. Mm-hmm. And then, that date that they go on at the World's Fair, it's not like you get a ton of scenes between them, but you get enough where I feel like you buy the chemistry between them and what she represents as this potential other path.
Yeah. It does help. There's no like time frame on it either. Exactly. Like your flashbacks, like I don't know, were they dating like a year or something? I don't. I mean, 6 months. I don't know, but like it's not like a very short time period, like in Batman Year 2, where it's like I feel like this is taking place over like a week, or even a lot of movies where you just fall in love and then want to get married immediately. Like there's a lot of space there. Like we're talking a lot of space there between those things, and we can all relate to that. Like he's watching Arthur Reeves and her hold hands with the binoculars. It's like they're Clark and the telescope in Smallville. Alan Miles absolutely watched this movie. Absolutely.
Yeah. No. So I just really appreciated how it was able to mine some territory that other stories aren't always built for. And
it's crazy about you're talking about this romance, right? I mean, the DC animated universe Superman, notorious for like, no, he's just George Reeves over here with no interest in Lois Lane. The character who has more of the romantic kind of DNA to him, Yeah. Batman over here, like, there's Catwoman, there's Talia, but it's never like he doesn't have that iconic lost love. He does now. And her name is Andrea Beaumont, and they came up with it in the DCAU. So way to go, y'all.
We talked about how it seemingly clearly borrowed from Year 2, but also shades of Year 1 in there as well, especially Bruce's first night out, attempting some heroics without his costume. What's funny, he doesn't have an easy go of it, but it's not nearly the disaster that it is in the Year 1 comic.
Right.
Like he ultimately kind of accomplishes it, but he it's a struggle, and he realizes this need to instill fear.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you brought this up. I wanted to bring this up too, that the Year 1 part of it, and obviously, him and just his ski mask on your knees, and they're like, yeah, dude, whatever. And you kind of start to understand, like, why would someone dress up as a bat? Because I'm like, it's crazy. Like, if you see some guy in a bat costume who's like telling you stuff, like, you're like, oh my god, you really would be afraid. Some guy in a ski mask, you're like, I mean, obviously you're going to be a little bit intimidated, but if you're already a criminal doing criminal activities, you're like, who are you, right? So that's definitely out of Year 1. Also, the police chase of Batman. Because Gordon, he's like, the Batman does not kill, and he's kind of exits from the movie. So it's like the anti-Year 1. The perfect Batman movie would be Year 1 plus Mask of the Phantasm with the two of them. That is one. I mean, not that Gordon was much of a three-dimensional character on animated series, but it was a familiar face. He was in a lot of episodes, and Bob Hastings does a great job as him on the animated series. But he kind of exits the movie pretty quickly, and Bullock kind of takes over, and him and the DA are like chasing Batman, and I love that energy though with the superheroes, where like the the cops turn against him and they got to follow him. And it's very much like that, the warehouse, dilapidated building from Year One and the Year One movie, obviously, where Batman is being chased by the police here. I think that's a great sequence and inspired by that quite a bit.
Yeah, definitely a major parallel there. No, that's a great call.
Yeah, you briefly mentioned it earlier, but the Shirley Walker score is incredible. And, the A-B difference between having something like that, a Mask of the Phantasm, and having, what we got in Batman Year One, right?
100%. I mean, it just brought it to life in a completely different way. It's this whole added component to the overall experience that, unfortunately, Batman Year One, while it had a score, just did not rise to that same level. It is a very different experience.
Yeah. And coming out of, obviously, that was the animated series theme, which, even though the animated series used the Danny Elfman, Shirley Walker was his composer, and not his composer, but his conductor. That's right. Because for whatever reason, Danny Elfman doesn't conduct the way like John Williams conducts, and so it's so good. So anyway, definitely wanted to shout that out. And, I mentioned this earlier, and it was like the whole justice versus vengeance thing. What is Kevin Conroy's most iconic line in his Batman? I am vengeance. I am the night. I am Batman, right? And then in this, he's like, but Andy, what will vengeance solve? It's like, if there's anyone here that knows that, Bruce, it's you, right? That's so good. Interesting, though.
I know.
Kind of contradictory.
That is tough to square, right? Because, that line is so iconic.
It's his most famous line.
But that's the thing. I know, as iconic as it is, it's like when you really drill down on Batman, who he is, what he's about, why he does what he does. Yeah, it's not personal vengeance against the killer of his parents, or even vengeance generally. It is this, I like to think, this grander sense of justice. So I feel like that moment between them was great, and I think really delineated each of those characters and where they're coming from in that moment. But yeah, I think when you are looking at that iconic line, that is a little tough to square.
Right. I mean, that became like Kevin Conroy's go-to. Like, he'd sign it, he'd say it at things, it's a sign off. I mean, it's iconic, right? And from one of the very early episodes of Batman the Animated Series, and it sums up the character, right, so well. And it's just funny that like that line is in stark contrast to his modus operandi or his mission statement as Batman. So,
but you know what? Maybe it's a good illustration of the very thin line that there can sometimes be between justice and vengeance, between Batman and Phantasm.
Yeah.
So, maybe we can make it work.
Go. And then just thinking of the two of them now, I just thought of something else that I want to mention. One of the most cutting scene of the movie, I think, is when Batman goes to her apartment and she knows he's there, and they have this little back and forth. This is the first time they've seen each other in 10 years, right? And it's a very charged conversation, and he's like, I can read lips. She had me bugged, that sort of thing, right? He's like, are you still following your dad's orders? Because as far as he knows, her dad is the reason why she ended the engagement. So that's a cutting line from him. And then from her, she's like, the only person controlled by their parents in this room is you. And that's like, oh my God, like what a cut, using the personal knowledge of their past against each other like that, only in the way that ex-lovers can do, right? Woo.
Well, and so, I mean, a couple of things. One, that whole idea of what would his parents say? What would his parents want for him? I mean, that's a big picture question that we see pop up.
Probably.
Yeah, right? So that's particularly interesting. And then this too, like you said, ex-lover. So the fact, I really think that the dual timelines here worked really, really well. Unlike in the comic where it just kind of all transpired in the moment there of year two. But the fact that there was this past between them and this broken engagement and then coming back into each other's lives at that point, they just added some layers there. Yeah, I thought that played great.
Yeah. Yeah, and that really ties into the last thing I wanted to say about the movie. Like, to me, like, Batman is a tragic hero. He's a tragic superhero. He has to make the sacrifice to be alone, because to be Batman, right? And that sums it up. Like, cause at the end, like, she's on like some yacht and some guy comes up to her, he's like, and was gonna hit on her, but he's like, "Oh, I'm sorry. Did you want to be alone?" And Andrea says, "I am alone." And you cut to Bruce, and you cut to Batman, and the bat signal comes on. He looks up and on to the next mission, and that's the tragedy of Batman. But then he has his found family, he has his Robins, and etc. And the DCAU that continues on through Batman Beyond, which is such a great, unintentionally epic story that that spans decades. But to me, like that's Batman, and that's why. And not to get into this conversation, I know you've had it, and we'll have it another day. But something like The Dark Knight Rises doesn't strike me as well because he has a happy ending. I'm like, well, that's not as mythic. That's not as like epic as like no. This is what he does now. Like he had his chance at happiness and it all fell apart, which is this as this movie exemplifies. And now he's Batman forever, Anthony. That's my point.
We'll get to Rises on the podcast, but I am a defender. I feel like it's fitting for that version of Batman and that version of the story that Nolan was telling in terms of what Bruce's goals were at the outset. Like I feel like he fulfilled that specific mission. But overall, no, I agree. I guess my last observation or question is, in those flashbacks, do we think Bruce would have actually abandoned his crusade if Andrea didn't leave and didn't break off the engagement? Because I think, like I was saying before about this fine line the movie walks, even as he's embarking on this romance, he's still exploring the caves or discovering another part of the caves. Then there's that whole sequence where he tries to stop that mugging and really gets his ass kicked. Right. But he, and Andrea's there and she's telling him, no, like leave it alone. But he can't. He has to intervene. So I do think there are enough hints that either this wouldn't have been something he could give up or certainly not that easily.
Yeah, I mean, it's like in the early comics where he's dating Julie Madison pretty steady, but that eventually just falls apart. Or Silver St. Cloud, went to call back to the Denny O'Neil stuff we were talking about. I mean, he would always give it a try, but it would fall apart because of his drive. Because he is this driven, singularly focused guy, and that would kind of overwrite and be prioritized over anything else. So I don't. Even though it ended the way it did, and it seems like, then he became Batman. It's not quite that simple. I mean, and oh man, that scene where he puts on the cowl for the first time, and Alfred's like, my God, like, and the music comes in again. Speaking of the music, like that's the moment, that he becomes Batman, and Alfred's scared of him, which ties into like the other guys, like, yeah, whatever, bro, you're just a guy in a ski mask. So I don't know, this movie it's so smart, it's so intelligent, like it just on every level it hits. And anyway, that's why it's my favorite Batman movie, Anthony.
So before I ask you for any last thoughts, one last thing that popped into my head that we didn't explicitly hit on earlier with year one, but that bears mentioning, not that we need to go through all of the ways it influenced subsequent stories. We've hit on some, others people can immediately call to mind, but just one of the defining moments of the third chapter is Batman trapped in that building, calling in the bats, sending out that signal. And it's such a key moment in that story, but then obviously brought to life on screen in Batman Begins. And so plenty of connection points to be found. Yeah. But the calling of the bats, and going back to my whole thing about that moment of the bats coming in, I had to mention that.
And that is, we were kind of down, not as down as we were on year two, but we were kind of down on the animated movie. That is a moment of like, that worked in animation, to see it in motion, like to see that the swarm of bats and how they're kind of like protecting the motorcycle he's on as they fly off. That was a hero moment. Something that I really wish we would have had a musical score to kind of get up out of your chair and put your fist in the air to, right? Right?
Absolutely. Well, I feel like we've done it. Is there anything we haven't said about Mask of the Phantasm or any of these other stories that you want to before we sign off?
Man, I gotta say it's just so interesting to look at them this way. I'm glad you packaged them all together. That was a kind of unique thought when you proposed this idea to me. I'm like, oh, okay, that sounds cool. But like, just how they all inform each other in their own way. Like, and we were pretty down on year two. I am sorry if there are fans out there and like, oh no, you guys are dogging on one of my favorite stories. Compared to these other ones though, I mean, it's really not fair. It's really year one of the greatest comic books ever written. Batman Mask of the Phantasm, one of, if not the best Batman movie of all time, according to a lot of people, myself included. Year two didn't stand a chance in this conversation. But that's what's interesting about. I think reinventing things over and over again is important for these characters. I mean, because year two was like, I don't know, kind of a half-baked kind of story in the early '90s or late '80s, I guess. And then the seeds of it were there, and whether or not they really inspired the Mask of the Phantasm, we'll never know. But the fact that it led to something like that is awesome. And I think you can keep looking back at. I mean, there's all kinds of we were joking about these wacky Adam West-esque stories in that collection, DC Finest collection. You can take something out of that and make the next Mask of the Phantasm if you really want. The the blueprints are there. The stories have written the characters. And this was a lot of fun to revisit this stuff, and especially in this way. So I love Batman, like I said, almost as much as Superman. If it wasn't for Smallville, it'd be a tougher conversation. But I loved revisiting these stories, and there's a reason that look, guys, there's a reason Year One is considered what it is, and there's a reason Mask of the Phantasm is considered what it is.
Well said. Yeah, no, I mean, look, Batman is a close second for me. That's why we're doing this, and I'm so happy we could get together and do this. And yeah, I'm really glad we looked at these together. I thought this would be an interesting way to go about it, and it proved to be. And yeah, for any Year Two defenders out there, like I said, the ideas and the themes, I think there was something valuable there, and it just took something like Mask of the Phantasm, I think, to really kind of bring it home. Your point is a good one, though. I mean, it's like, it is one of those things where you understand it, why it's the successful, well-regarded comic book stories that are more often mined for inspiration. It's like, it makes sense. But at the same time, it's like again, whether it was explicit or not here with Mask of the Phantasm, but the fact that it's like, yeah, you could take something that didn't quite work and give it this new life. That's really a cool thing. And so I'm very happy with the end result here. So this was a blast. I thank you so much. What do you want to share with folks about Always Hold On to Smallville?
Well, as of this recording, we are wrapping up our Smallville, the Ultimate Season. You've been on a few episodes of that, Anthony. Thank you very much. It was a lot of fun to have you part of that, where we went through every episode number of Smallville, 1 through 22, and we picked our favorite. Me and my panel of guests picked our favorite over the course of the 10 seasons, and that created the ultimate season of Smallville. So that was a really fun project to kind of look back now that we've completed our episode by episode coverage of the show. Fun way to kind of celebrate and look back, and kind of a fun way to pick the best of a best. It's all subjective. It's all relative. It's like what you like, but we had a lot of fun just kind of celebrating the show that way. And look, it's finally time to talk about the comics and the books I've been talking about for so long on the show. So that it's going to be next. I couldn't tell you when, couldn't tell you exactly what the plan is there, but we're going to keep talking about Smallville and talk about some Superman stuff as well. There's movies coming. There's My Adventures with Superman. We do Superman specials about things like that. So hopefully you enjoyed being on this episode. And if you want to hear more from me, go to Always Smallville with 1S on social media.
Awesome. So you hear that, guys? Don't hold your breath for Always Hold On to Gotham, but there's plenty more you can hear from Zach right now and in the weeks and months ahead. So make sure you check that out. Thank you so much for tuning in. Make sure you come back next time. Our Frank Miller Odyssey is only just beginning. So there's a lot more to come, especially now as we are going to be celebrating the 40-year anniversary of Dark Knight Returns. Until then, as always, it's not who you are underneath, but what you do that defines you. It's been over a decade since my comic shop closed, but if there's one place where I feel the same sense of camaraderie, it's Fat Moose Comics, the Garden State's best and oldest comic book store, led by current owner Sean Hendricks. Visit Fat Moose in Whippany, New Jersey, and be sure to reach out via the Fat Moose Comics Facebook page. Moose is also home to our main man, Justin DeVoe, who is taking you inside his world of collecting and cosplay on his YouTube channel, Tannelier's Basement. Subscribe today. I'm a parent, which means that a family-friendly comic shop is a must, and there's none better than Aw Yeah Comics. Visit one of their 3 locations, Harrison, New York, Muncie, Indiana, or Skokie, Illinois, home to our pal, Sweet Sweet Bernie. Follow them on social media and at awyeahcomics.com for news about signings, live sales, and much more. Their name says exactly how they feel about it. Say it with me now. Aw yeah! Support the show and receive exclusive content by becoming a member at patreon.com/Anthony Desiato. Rewards include our DCU spinoff podcast, advanced listens, sponsorship opportunities, and more. My sincere thanks to all patrons. Please rate and review the podcast via your platform of choice, subscribe so that you never miss an episode, and continue the conversation by joining us on social media. Links are in the show notes. Flat Squirrel Podcast is also home to Digging for Kryptonite, a Superman fan journey, a long-running weekly series mining Superman's vast mythology across time and media. Subscribe today. Lighting the Bat Signal is a Flat Squirrel production. Key art by Isaiah Simmons and theme music by Kill Me Kate.